Chapter 630. A squad leader who was squatting with his soldiers walked out. When he heard Luo Ran's arrogant words, he glanced at him coldly and said to his soldiers, "Put him aside." Ambulance. He should be thankful that his mouth wasn't stuffed with mud. When the soldiers heard this, they threw aside the boy who was clamoring and wanted to throw money at them. Stinky soldier. This was already insulting a soldier. Luo Ran, who wanted to use money to solve the problem, roared with a ferocious face, "Damn it, you think the money is too little? Name me a price. I don't lack money, kill her." When Yi Qian, who was still hanging from the protective net, heard this, his eyes suddenly flashed with anger. Their matter was a private matter, yet he dared to insult the soldiers. After that, Yi Qian said thank you to the two soldiers and walked towards Luo Ran with a gloomy face. "Luo Ran, don't drag the soldiers into this. I'm standing right here. If you have the ability, come and fight me." In Yi Qian's eyes, no matter which unit the soldiers were in, they were all comrades. Luo Ran insulting them was even more unacceptable than insulting himself. When the soldiers saw the quiet female soldier rush out to protect them, they felt a rush of warmth in their hearts. They quickly pulled her back. "Don't take him seriously. There are plenty of people in society who can teach him a lesson." "Fine, I'll teach you a lesson now." Luo Ran was still sitting, but when he heard this, he stood up abruptly. However, he forgot that his feet were bruised by Yi Qian. He sucked in a breath of cold air and endured the pain. His eyes were as fierce as the eyes of a crocodile. "Don't run if you have the guts." When the two soldiers saw this, they grabbed Luo Ran's hands and said loudly, "Behave yourself. How dare you hit people in the military? You must be tired of living. A soldier is hitting a student. A soldier is hitting a student." During military training, Luo Ran had provoked the soldiers' authority countless times. He relied on the fact that instructors couldn't hit or scold students, so he was particularly presumptuous. Now that he was being held by two soldiers, he simply shouted at the top of his lungs, "Help, help. A stinky soldier is hitting a student. Someone come quickly." The stinky soldier hit a student. When Yi Qian heard this, he laughed instead of getting angry. "Luo Ran, do you think the army is a black market?" In front of these soldiers who were prepared for the country and the people, he kept asking them to pay, and even said that they were stinky soldiers. What kind of family could produce such an insufferably arrogant fellow? Of course we stink as soldiers. How can we not stink when we're covered in sweat every day? You, on the other hand, not only do you have a foul mouth, even your heart is foul. The class leader quietly shielded Yi Qian behind her. She stared coldly at the boy and said in a deep voice, "You should think about how you're going to explain this to the school. Using money to hire killers, boy, we're all listening." Yi Qian said in a low voice, "Class rep, he's coming for me. If you let him go and the students hear about it, they might really think that you hit him." One had to know that his legs were definitely covered in bruises right now. He couldn't let the soldiers take the blame for him. "It's fine, you go first. Leave this to us." The class leader turned her head and looked at the girl who stood up for the soldiers. She had a smile on her tanned face. "He said that we hit him, but he needs to have evidence." It was because he had evidence that Yi Qian couldn't let the soldiers hit him. She looked coldly at Luo Ran and heard the class leader ask her, "How are you? Are you in extreme pain anywhere? If you're not feeling well, I'll order the soldiers to carry you to the evacuation vehicle on a stretcher. The medical staff in the vehicle can give you a checkup." Chapter 631. After all, Yi Qian was trained to be a special forces soldier, so even the class leader didn't notice her sneak attack. She shook her head and said, "I didn't really kick him. He looks fierce, but he's not that bad." She pointed at Luo Ran, "Class leader, let him go." also want to see how strong he really is. She didn't even need to try. She could tell that he didn't have any skills. Money makes the world go round. Luo Ran's so-called arrogance was built on the foundation of money. He used money to bribe others to stand up for him and make himself look awe-inspiring. We won't take care of him. Someone will take care of him when he's outside. The class leader glanced at the boy who thought he was great. She sneered and said, "This kind of person deserves a beating no matter where he goes. He's not worth our time." However, this girl was right. If an unsuspecting student heard him shouting like this, they would really think that their comrades hit him. She raised her hand and signaled her comrades to let him go. There was no need to argue with this kind of person. When the two soldiers saw their squad leader's signal, they released their grip and lightly pushed Luo Ran forward. Luo Ran's head was pushed down, and he staggered a few steps before he fell to the ground. He fell right in front of the class leader's feet. His forehead even hit the tip of the class leader's canvas shoes. Every time he opened his mouth, he either cursed or humiliated people. If they weren't in the military, he would have covered his head with his clothes and punched him until he cried for his parents. In the outside world, as long as Luo Ran said he was willing to pay, people would line up to fight for him. It had been like this since he was young. He had never suffered in front of anyone and no one would refuse him in front of money. Luo Ran, who fell and got hit in the chest by a rock, was furious. His facial features were as fierce as a murderer's. He grabbed a fist-sized rock and threw it at the class leader's feet without thinking. There was no way he could succeed with his skills. The class leader took a step back and easily dodged it. A cold light flashed in her bright eyes. She looked at the boy who attacked an active duty soldier and said indifferently, "Send him to the teacher," then cut down all the nearby surveillance videos and hand them to the school. This is the first time I've seen a student who publicly insults and attacks an active duty soldier. Luo Ran lost his rationality after failing again and again. He was used to being arrogant and was used to being flattered by others. Now that he hit a wall again, he was furious and cursed, "You poor soldier, stop putting on airs in front of me. You think you're so great, but in my eyes, you're just a blade of grass. So what? You think I'm afraid of them? I'm not even afraid of the principal." Yi Jian's hands gradually clenched into fists when she heard him. She took 2 steps forward and said in a cold voice, "Luo Ran, stand up now. Let's have a good fight." Luo Ran was speechless. His eyes were bloodshot. The class leader was stunned when he heard this, because he realized this girl was really going to start a fight with the boy. "What are you doing?" The more you pay attention to him, the more he gets motivated. The class leader didn't want the 2 students to start a fight in front of her, so she said to her comrades, "What are you waiting for? Take him away." The 2 soldiers heard this and saluted their class leader. They responded with a "yes" and walked in front of Luo Ran with cold eyes. Chapter 632. The class leader blocked Yi Qian again. "Hurry up and gather, it's almost time to eat. Hurry up and gather." She then whispered, "I can't control you guys outside, but this is the military. If you guys really fight, then his fault will become the fault of both of you. I don't see any injuries on you. Hurry up and leave, we know what to do." Luo Ran really wanted to fight with Yi Qian. Both times, it was Yi Qian who brought it up, but he was stopped by the soldiers. Now that he saw the 2 soldiers walking towards him with unfriendly gazes, he didn't stand up and step back. "What are you doing? What are you doing? You want to hit me? I'm warning you, if you dare to hit me, I'll sue you. If you dare to touch me, I won't fucking let you guys off. Touch you? Don't dirty our hands." One of the soldiers looked at him coldly. He grabbed Luo Ran's shoulder with one hand and clamped down on his arm with the other. The two of them lifted Luo Ran up. The boy with the sharp and arrogant eyes sneered, "Dealing with you is your parents' business, it has nothing to do with us." They really couldn't hit or scold students. Even if Luo Ran cursed fiercely, the soldiers could only endure it. Yi Qian glanced at him and said to the class leader, "Okay, we'll deal with it outside. But class leader, can I go over and say a few words to him? I promise I won't hit him." It was fine to say a few words. Besides, the boy was being held down, so there was no need to worry about him hurting the girl. She nodded and said seriously, "Okay, I'll give you 1 minute. After you say it, we'll immediately take him away." In less than a minute, Yi Qian walked in front of Luo Ran. She looked at Luo Ran quietly with bloodshot eyes. "I'll give you a chance to take revenge. Next Sunday night, I'll get off the bus at the intersection in front of the school. If you have the guts, bring your men over." He wasn't even afraid of the principal. How could he survive in the school if he brought a crowd to beat up a student? No matter how rich their family was, since this matter had already been stirred up, the bigger the better. After she finished speaking, the soldiers didn't give Luo Ran a chance to reply and forcefully took him away. This caused Luo Ran to scold the soldiers one moment and Yi Qian the next. They could be heard from several meters away. Just then, the students of grade 12 class 6 passed through. Yao Jing heard Luo Ran's voice coming from the top of the mountain. She listened carefully and heard him say, "Yi Qian, just you fucking wait. Wait for me next Friday." Hearing this, Yao Jing's face darkened. Useless thing. Not only did he fail to teach Yi Qian a lesson, he even got himself implicated. The field training was about to end, but they hadn't found a single opportunity. "Yao Jing, hurry up. Our classmates are rushing us." She stood still, and the girl behind her urged her, "Hurry up and rest. I'm exhausted." The shouting gradually faded away. Yao Jing took a deep breath and continued forward. At such a good time, 1 or 2 people were so stupid that they forgot to bring their brains with them. When Yi Qian returned to school, she might as well hire someone to climb over the wall at night and beat her up secretly. Grade 12 Class 3 passed through the long line of students. It was already past 11 in the morning when all the students passed through the 3-kilometer express lane. After they passed through, a delicious lunch was waiting for them. Every class meals were delivered to the mountain on time. As grade 12 Class 1 students were the first to arrive, they happened to see the soldiers carrying large stainless steel buckets filled with rice and vegetables. The logistics were impeccable. Chapter 633. When Yi Qian rushed back, her classmates were all sitting in the resting area, waiting for dinner. And Jessen, who had been anxiously waiting for Yi Qian's return, was now asking around if anyone had seen Yi Qian. At that time, she was so tired that she didn't even have the strength to stand up. In a daze, she heard Yi Qian say that she would be back soon. In the end, she waited until now and didn't see her return, so she couldn't help but feel anxious. When the instructor of Class 1 heard that Yi Qian didn't return, he couldn't believe it. "How is that possible? She left before me. She should be resting somewhere. Let's go, I'll go look for her with you. I've already looked for her and asked many classmates. It's really her. Yi Qian really didn't come back. If it weren't for that bastard Luo Ran, she wouldn't be so worried." And Jessen was so anxious that she was on the verge of tears. Even her voice changed. "Instructor, quickly send someone to look for her. She really didn't come back." She couldn't say that Yi Qian went to look for Luo Ran. What if she said too much and caused unnecessary trouble? Wouldn't that be bad? The instructor didn't panic. He comforted her. "Go rest. I'll go look for her. I'll go look for her." It was impossible for her to go missing. There were scouts all the way, and the regiment even sent out 12 classes to protect her. If anything really happened, he would definitely know. And Jessin, whose eyes were red from anxiety, couldn't sit still and rest. She didn't see Yi Ying immediately lower her eyes when she heard that Yi Qian didn't come back. Her eyes were filled with deep amusement. Did that mean that Luo Ran had succeeded? Why did the good news come so suddenly? She couldn't believe it. The scene of Yi Qian stripping the snake flashed through her mind. Yi Ying's smile froze. She suddenly felt that she really couldn't believe that Luo Ran and a few boys would succeed. It would be more believable if he found a few hooligans to do it. Yi Ying, who had lost her appetite after smelling the food, had all sorts of thoughts. Of course, she wanted to see Yi Qian get beaten up by Luo Ran, but she also felt that it was unlikely. So when Yi Qian walked over, and Jessin, who had said that she had no strength at all, suddenly stood up. Seeing Yi Qian in perfect condition, her eyes were filled with deep disappointment. Luo Ran, this trash, actually didn't succeed again. Do you want to throw up again? The girl sitting beside her saw that Yi Ying's face was even worse than before and thought that she was feeling unwell again. She quickly picked up her water bottle and stood up. I'll help you to the side. You can't vomit here. Realizing that she had overreacted, Yi Ying quickly withdrew her gaze and smiled at the girl. Nothing, nothing. My legs are a little numb from sitting, so I want to stand up and walk around. He didn't succeed again, damn it. Just how was he going to deal with that damned girl? You scared me to death. You scared me to death. And Jessin was crying and laughing at the same time. When she saw Yi Qian standing beside her safe and sound, she felt as if a heavy stone had been lifted from her heart. She immediately felt her legs giving way. Quick, give me a hand. I'm too weak, too weak. Seeing that his friend was concerned about him, Yi Qian hid the hostility between his brows and his expression softened. I'm fine. If something really happened, it wouldn't be me. Let's go and rest for a while. I can smell the aroma of food. Dinner should be served soon. I'm sweating all over, and now I'm sweating all over. My appetite will probably be comparable to a guy's. Once Yi Qian returned, and Jessin felt as if nothing had happened. She didn't ask anything. In her eyes, she only knew that her friend had returned safely. Nothing else mattered. Chapter 634. To Yi Qian, it was her fortune to have a friend like Jessin who never asked her why and only cared about her safety. Soon, Yao Jing also saw Yi Qian. As she walked over with her classmates, she only glanced at Yi Qian from the corner of her eyes. Luo Ran wasn't here, but Yi Qian was. Something must have happened to Luo Ran. Thinking of this possibility, Yao Jing forced herself to take a deep breath to calm her anger. Asking Luo Ran to deal with Yi Qian. It was indeed unreliable. If Yang Heng were to do it, she wouldn't have to worry about failure. Yao Jing couldn't help but recall what she saw last night. She felt the anger that she tried so hard to suppress surging uncontrollably. She glanced coldly at Yi Qian again. He was so difficult to deal with. It seemed that Luo Ran alone wouldn't be enough. She had to think of another way. Two malicious gazes fell on him. Even if it was just from the corner of her eyes, Yi Qian was sensitive enough to sense it. When he caught sight of it a second time, he immediately looked up. Yi Qian, who was about to drink from his water bottle, looked at Yao Jing. His lips slowly curved upwards as he waved the water bottle at her, as if he was provoking her. It made Yao Jing feel even more contemptuous. Gritting her teeth, Yao Jing returned a bright smile. Her heartstrings were stretched taut. Last night, she was almost discovered by her. Now, she just happened to catch sight of her from the corner of her eyes. This meant that she must have seen her last night. Thinking of this, Yao Jing's heart skipped a beat. Yi Qian wasn't easy to deal with. It was impossible to get Luo Ran to deal with him alone. Let's eat, let's eat. Everyone in Grade 2 Class 1 is here. It was lunchtime. Grade 2 Class 1, which had everyone present, was the first to start eating. The students who were too tired to stand up gritted their teeth and stood up even if they didn't have the energy. Luo Lian's lunch was even more sumptuous. There were pork ribs, braised fish, and beef. They were all high-calorie and high-protein dishes. The soup was kelp and pork bone soup. It was cooked to a creamy white. Just looking at it made one's mouth water. As the first batch of high school students in the province to participate in military training, although it was very tiring, they did not lose out in terms of food. The sun was already shining above their heads. After the second and third year students of Provincial First High School and 16th High School had finished their meal, they rested in the forest that was a restricted military zone. They had an hour to rest. At this moment, even the naughtiest boys would sit down, tilt their heads, and fall asleep in the shade of the trees. The terrain of the resting forest was relatively flat. The weeds and shrubs on the ground had been completely removed. All the sensors could see all the students 360 degrees without any blind spots. The infrared sensors on the periphery were densely packed. Anyone who crossed the line would be alerted immediately. The instructors took turns to rest, keeping watch with their comrades who were secretly protecting them and paying attention to the movements of the students. There was a student who showed a pained expression when he fell asleep. Immediately, a medic trotted over to check on the student's body. Time ticked by. When the accompanying platoon leader saw the 5 students on the receiving vehicle, he picked up the walkie-talkie and connected it to the individual walkie-talkies of all the instructors. In the afternoon, the leaders of the provincial military region will come to inspect the shooting range. Please get ready. Class 1, got it. Class 2, got it. In the stiff and crisp replies, all the instructors finished answering at once. Sitting in the hall of the provincial military region, the regiment commander of the anti-chemical regiment was having a serious meeting. The person who presided over the meeting was quite a high-ranking officer. The gold stars on his epaulette flashed so brightly that he, as the regiment commander, did not dare to be distracted. This was the leader of the general military region. Chapter 635. The regiment commander of the anti-chemical regiment had rushed to the provincial military region at the last minute. If the chief from the capital had not mentioned military training, he would not be sitting next to these chiefs who had higher military ranks and occupations than him. The students are the hope of the country. They are our successors. They are the future of the country. Military training must be passed down from generation to generation. It must become the spirit of our country. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was sitting on the main podium, said word by word calmly, full of the military prestige that made people admire him. Regiment Commander Lu wrote down the key points of the meeting and asked the regiment commander sitting next to him, Old Gua, are the students of the Provincial No. 1 Middle School in your regiment? The Provincial No. 1 Middle School and No. 16 Middle School are in my regiment. Why? Are you also assigned to your regiment? They were all from the same province and would meet each other during the provincial military region meetings. Therefore, they all knew each other. Regiment Commander Gua glanced at Regiment Commander Lu's notes and could not help but laugh. Your handwriting has improved a lot. Hearing this, Regiment Commander Lu closed his notebook and stared at him. Your handwriting is not much different from mine. Don't change the topic. Let me ask you something. Old Gua had regained some confidence after seeing his handwriting. Regiment Commander Lu simply took the notebook in his hand. There is a girl named Yi Qian in the Provincial No. 1 Middle School. How is it? Are you pleasantly surprised? It was as if he was the baby of his family, unable to resist the urge to show off. Even the expression on his face was filled with a sense of pride, as if he was honored. Regiment Commander Gua, who had wanted to make fun of him for a while, heard this. Hey, good guy. The person that his political commissar was jealous of was right in front of him. He immediately became interested. Let's talk about this later. Let's talk about it later. It's a long story. Okay, let's talk about it over dinner. I have something to do in the afternoon. I have to rush back to the base at 8 p.m. You can get back to the regiment in a few hours, but I have to wait until tomorrow. Regiment Commander Liu rushed over from Fujian town. After the meeting, he had to accompany Commander-in-Chief Xia to the automobile training base to take a look. Then, he had to catch the train back to the city at 6 p.m. It would take him another 6 hours to get back to Fujian town. The two of them couldn't always talk to each other, so they ended the conversation after a few words. Southern Province is the first province to implement military training in secondary schools. This provides valuable experience for the provinces that need to include military training next year. All the troops that hold the military training will write a summary report after the end of the training for the provinces to refer to. It was already noon. With the end of Commander-in-Chief Xiao's meeting, the whole meeting finally came to an end with applause. Green figures with golden epaulets representing military ranks walked out of the venue in an orderly manner. Their military might was so heavy that it was suffocating. Walking at the front was naturally Commander-in-Chief Xia. Although the meeting had ended, the task of understanding the affairs of the various troops and regiments was not over yet. The provincial military leaders who accompanied him were dressed in casual clothes and did not feel hot walking under the scorching sun. All of their attention was focused on the conversation with the commander-in-chief. Their expressions were serious as they answered his questions carefully. Commander-in-Chief Xia, as a general of the army, was the highest military rank in the army and also the highest military rank in the entire army. In the face of this chief with the highest military rank in the entire army, no one dared to take him lightly. No one dared to have the slightest intention of fooling him. They walked so fast that their shirts were soaked in sweat. Regiment Commander Liu, who wanted to say a few words to Regiment Commander Guo of the Anti-Chemical Regiment, was stopped by his colleagues. As for Regiment Commander Guo, he was even more busy. He was dragged to Commander-in-Chief Xia for questioning. Chapter 636. Only now did Commander Guo know who the provincial military had informed him a few days ago that there would be a chief from the capital visiting the military training on the day of their regiment's military training. It turned out that it was Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was so powerful that no one dared to look at him directly. There's no need to be extravagant tomorrow. The Southern Province is the first military training place in the country. The higher-ups attach great importance to it, so they sent me here to take a look. What about you guys? If you have any requests or difficulties, feel free to tell us. Only by telling us can we know how to perfect your requests and solve your difficulties. Commander-in-Chief Xia had a dignified manner in front of the soldiers. Every word he said was powerful and had a deterrence that directly struck the hearts of the soldiers. Even if you didn't bring a pen and ink, you could still remember every word he said in your heart. Regiment Commander Guo was a lieutenant colonel. There were countless regiment commanders and lieutenant colonels in the country, and he was not a military officer stationed in the capital. It would be a lie if he said that he was not nervous when meeting Commander-in-Chief Xia for the first time. Hearing this, he immediately said, "At present, there are no difficulties that the military region needs to solve. Although there are some small problems during the military training, they can be solved in time. The cooperation between the school and the army is also good. During these few days of military training, the potential of the students can be seen even more clearly. This completely proves that implementing the military training system in each school is a very correct policy. There are many small bad habits of the students that can be solved in a few days of military training, but there are also some very stubborn students. This is a problem of family education. Even if they are sent to the army, they can't change their bad habits. He was talking about Luo Ran. This kid even dared to scold his soldiers. How could he not teach him a lesson? Commander-in-Chief Xia understood the implication of his words. After a moment of silence, he nodded and said, "What you said is indeed a problem. There are many people who rely on their family's connections in the army to send their children to the army. They hope that the army can correct their children's mistakes. As for some cadres, as long as it doesn't affect their promotion, they turn a blind eye. They invite some trouble back. Not only is it a waste of military funds, but it also seriously infringes on the rights of taxpayers. Every student's military training results must be recorded. Their words, actions, and character must all be recorded in detail to serve as a reference for future local conscription. You have to give those naughty students a chance as well. You have to remember those stubborn students. Don't let them rely on their connections to make a living in the army." If someone with a keen understanding of military affairs heard this, they would know that this was the first step in rectifying the unhealthy atmosphere in the army. The reorganization of the entire army was not a small matter. The water involved was too deep. If one was not careful, the ship could capsize. As the helmsman, he had to stabilize the rudder and steadily sail the ship to the port. Regiment Commander Guo was not that sharp. He only knew that the other meaning of the military training was as he and the political commissar had guessed. He felt relieved as if a weight had been lifted from his heart. "Commander-in-Chief, I would like to follow Regiment Commander Guo to the anti-chemical regiment to take a look. Is that okay?" Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't know when a major came to his right hand. He didn't know about his existence until he spoke. Regiment Commander Guo couldn't help but take a second look. Then, he saw some clues. This major's expression was similar to Commander-in-Chief Xia's. When he pursed his lips, there was a murderous aura that even he didn't have. Chapter 637. If he hadn't opened his mouth, he wouldn't have noticed. It was so silent that even with so many people present, no one noticed this major. Commander-in-Chief Xia glanced at him and said to Commander Guo, "The Southern Province's Chemical Defense Regiment is a role model for all the troops. He's here to learn from you for a few days." The Snowfield Brigade was weak in chemical defense. Now that there were more and more missions abroad, they had sent several of their corps members to learn from the Chemical Defense Regiment. The Southern Province's Chemical Defense Regiment was one of the strongest in the military. Xia Jinyuan, who was supposed to go to the Lindong military region, changed places with his comrades and went to the Southern Province's Chemical Defense Regiment. The reason was simple. Yi Qian was in the Southern Province. Moreover, she was going to be training in the Chemical Defense Regiment. His decision to change places at the last minute was a wise one. There was no reason for Commander Guo not to agree. Moreover, their regiment was supposed to send elites to the military region. If they stayed, they would become members of the nation's first chemical defense anti-terrorism special forces. Now that even Commander-in-Chief Xia thought highly of his regiment, it was an honor for the soldiers. A reorganization of the entire army was unknowingly unfolding in the dark. As students, how would they know that every word they said during military training had such great significance? At this moment, all of them woke up from their afternoon naps. Their legs were so sore that they didn't want to move at all. But how could they do that? The whistle blew and all the students of Grade 2 Class 1 stood at attention. Seeing their high morale, they had to stand up even if they didn't want to. Fortunately, there were only 5 kilometers left. They just had to endure it and endure it for a while. 5 kilometers could be covered by walking normally for about an hour, but for the students who had been marching for hours, it took even longer. Even when the boys were starting to complain about being tired, Yi Qian walked at a brisk pace. She even helped the girls in her class from time to time. Even so, no one saw her fall behind. When they looked up, they could always see her as straight as the instructor walking at the front. Yi Ying looked at the figure that made the instructor smile. The jealousy in her heart was like thousands of ants gnawing at her internal organs. She was now a shining point of light wherever she went. Wherever he went, he would be envied and worshipped. It shouldn't be like this. An orphan, a thing with nothing, should live a lowly life. He should live in Yi Ying's halo forever and do things according to her whims. She thought of the past. Yi Qian ate, wore, and used things that she, Yi Ying, did not want. Even if it was a small toothbrush, it was something that she had used before. But now, everything had changed. As long as Yi Qian was around, the halo would always be on her, and she had become a supporting character. She could only look at her, and even be deeply hurt by the halo on her. Everyone only saw the current Yi Qian, but they did not know what she was like in the past. Lowly, cowardly, incompetent. The Yi Qian of the past was this unbearable. Why didn't anyone believe in him? But why should I believe in Yi Qian, who used to be so despicable? She was still smiling. She didn't know what she said, but the instructor actually gave her a thumbs up. Yi Ying only felt that her body was falling rapidly, as if she was falling into a bottomless abyss. No, I can't admit defeat. How can I admit defeat? Absolutely not. And I can't lose to a wretched girl. Chapter 638. Wang Rui, did you notice that the instructor treats Yi Qian differently? He even gave her a thumbs up. Also, I noticed that the instructor is quite handsome too. He looks like the type that Yi Qian likes. The jealousy in Yi Ying's heart turned into soft words. Yi Ying said to the girl supporting her, "It looks like they're a good match." There was a shrill voice in his heart that was telling him that he must do something, that he must do something. How could she let her be in the limelight? How could she continue to be in the limelight? Wang Rui was the class life committee member. The class committee took turns taking care of Yi Ying, who had a heart condition, and the girls with weaker physiques. She was so tired that she didn't even have the energy to talk. How could she have noticed if the instructor gave Yi Qian a thumbs up? Hearing this, she said weakly, "Yi Qian is already very outstanding. It's normal for her to be praised by the instructor. Okay, if you have the energy to talk, can you walk by yourself? I really don't have the energy to support you. I want to change people, change people. This Yi Ying is really... I don't know what to say about her." She said that the instructor is Yi Qian's type. How did you know? Wang Rui didn't say anything. Instead, she called for a change and called the class leader, Lu Axian, over. Class leader, take over. I want to rest. I strongly request to rest. Wang Rui wasn't a talkative girl. She didn't like to gossip. In addition, Yi Qian often tutored her. The scales in her heart were obviously biased towards Yi Qian. After handing Yi Ying over to the class leader, she immediately rushed to the front. She didn't want to stay for even a second. Yi Ying was so angry that she almost fell over. What's wrong with Wang Rui? Didn't you say she didn't have the energy? Why does it look like she still has some energy? She runs pretty fast. Lu Axian supported Yi Ying's arm with both hands. He couldn't help but laugh when he saw Wang Rui rushing to the front. She must be trying to grab the target. She hasn't even seen a gun before. Don't even have the energy to shoot. He didn't even see Yi Ying's darkened face. He started talking to himself, then shut up after he finished. Ying had no choice but to endure it. She couldn't say that the vice class leader liked the instructor in front of the class leader, right? Although LV Axayan was a boy, he had been crawling and running for more than 10 kilometers. After all, he was still a student, so he was tired. After helping Ying walk a few hundred meters, he smiled and said, "I say, Ying, it's better if you don't participate in these kinds of group activities that your body can't take. You said you don't want to be a burden to the class, but think about it. Every few hundred meters or 1 kilometer, the class has to send a student to help you walk. This is already a burden to the class. Didn't you say yesterday that Yi Qian's last-minute addition would affect the class's military training score? Actually, you're the same today. You had nothing to do with it, but you insisted on joining. Not only did you tire yourself out, but you also made us, the class committee, very tired. If you want to challenge yourself, you have to take your body into consideration. Heart disease was a disease of the rich. It could only be recuperated. How could it be tormented for more than 10 kilometers? Why is your face so ugly? Do you want to take a break?" LV Axayan said with a smile. He saw that her face was a bit pale, so he stopped walking and planned to help her to the side of the road to sit down. Ying, who wasn't sick, gritted her teeth and revealed a bitter smile. "I'm sorry, class leader. I didn't think I would be so useless. I can't even walk more than 10 kilometers. You're right. People should do their best in everything they do. I've really put you all through a lot this time." Chapter 639. It's good that you understand. Are you sure you don't want to rest? Can you still continue walking? Lu Axian asked worriedly. "You have to tell us if you're not feeling well. The instructor told us to take care of you." Patient. She wasn't sick at all. She wasn't sick. Ying, who was roaring in her heart, suddenly felt like she had shot herself in the foot. She had grown up in the village since she was a child. If it weren't for this heart disease, would she have to pretend to be sick every day? Now, she wanted to show off during the military training, to let the instructor and her classmates know that she, Ying, was actually very capable. But in the end, she couldn't show off because of her heart disease. Ying was unwilling to give up. The last 5 kilometers were getting shorter and shorter. Following the instructor's shout, the students at the front began to sprint towards the assembly point. There were arrow signs along the way, indicating where to go. Yi Qian said to the instructor, "Then I'll go first. I'll wait for my classmates at the assembly point. Okay, remember to plant the victory flag in our camp." The instructor was obviously happy that his students were the first to reach the assembly point. He laughed at Yi Qian and said, "Wait for me to bring them back." He was telling his comrades that he would definitely return victorious. Yi Qian naturally reached out and high-fived the instructor. "Good luck. Keep it up." Such a handsome and soldierly action didn't seem out of place when Yi Qian did it. The instructor watched as Yi Qian took large strides and gradually broke into a jog. In a short while, he had shaken off a few boys. After turning a corner, the instructor could no longer see Yi Qian's figure. "Students of Grade 2, Class 1, do your best. Your comrade Yi Qian is already sprinting. Are there any men who dare to compete with Yi Qian?" Yi Qian, being the first to sprint, undoubtedly raised the morale of the entire class. Countless voices shouted in response, "Go, Grade 2, Class 1, do your best. Strive to be the best, don't fall behind. Go." With the first to sprint, there was a second to sprint. Not only the students of Grade 2 Class 1, but the other Grade 2 classes and the boys of Grade 3 Class 3 also started to jog and sprint from behind. The instructor said that Yi Qian rushed to the front again. "Damn! If she gets first place again, all of us boys will have no face. There's nothing you can do about it even if you're shameless. You're good at everything. Yang, you can do it. Now it's up to you to make our class proud. Those who specialize in sports, are you guys hungry? Can you run a little faster? Zhangbin, do your best. Come on, Zhangbin. We think highly of you. When Lu Axan saw that the students who weren't from his class had started to run while he, as the class monitor, was still dawdling, he couldn't help but feel anxious. Damn, they're all running. I have to run too. Yi Ying watched helplessly as her classmates were led away by Yi Qian. All of them were willing to follow her example. As the blood in her chest churned, she heard Lu Axan say, Yi Ying, I have to sprint too. You don't have to sprint. Rest as you walk and wait for the container truck to pick you up. After saying that, he immediately found a place to sit down and rest. Sit here, sit here. Take the water bottle and essential balm. Don't wander around. Even though the instructor is secretly protecting us, we can't keep causing trouble for them, right? Chapter 640. Yi Ying, who was actually planning to walk away after LV Axian left, swallowed her anger. She almost fainted from anger, forgetting that there were many soldiers protecting the students in the dark along the way. They would know if she walked away on purpose. Yi Ying could only sit down and wait for the container truck. The platoon leader of the anti-chemical regiment asked the soldier at the front, 0606, who's in the front now, 0606, received. Yi Qian from Grade 2 Class 1. Yi Qian from Grade 2 Class 1 is in the first. What's the distance between them? The platoon leader in the middle of the team moved quickly while asking the soldiers to keep an eye on the students. Sprinting while tired would cause the heart to beat faster. The weak could faint at any time, so they couldn't let their guard down. The distance between them is about 1 kilometer. There are 5 boys following closely behind. The first boy is Grade 3 Class 1 Yangheng. Over. The platoon leader wasn't surprised to hear these 2 names. Yi Qian was a dark horse. The political commissar had reminded her last night that she was a soldier trained by a certain army. Naturally, she was stronger than the students. However, it was rare to see someone so strong that even a veteran like her was shocked. A student who was more like a soldier than a soldier. No matter what he did next, it shouldn't be shocking anymore. The platoon leader cut off the communication with the sentry post and waved to the soldiers hiding in the dark to help a pale-faced boy away. Then, she stopped and watched as wave after wave of students passed in front of her, gritting her teeth. The 6 days of military training had been very rewarding. They had sharpened their minds and built the courage to challenge their limits and defeat themselves. For the students, they had already reached the standard of this military training. So far, no one had taken the initiative to withdraw from the 20-kilometer field training. Even if they got on the container truck, they would immediately get off and walk again as soon as their bodies recovered. If others could do it, they could do it too. It was this unyielding spirit that made them complete the first self-challenge in their lives. After sitting for a while, Yi Ying saw the students pass in front of her one after another. She gritted her teeth and stood up again. She wasn't tired, but for her heart disease, she had to pretend to be tired. After a few steps, someone caught up with her and said in a deep voice, Luo Ran was taken away by force. It was Yao Jing. She finally found a chance to talk to Yi Ying. That trash. Don't look for him in the future. Don't drag yourself into it. Now that she and Yi Ying were in the same boat, it was only right for her to inform Yi Ying if anything happened. If anything happened, there would be someone to take the blame for her. Yao Jing's thoughts were deep, but Yi Ying wasn't bad either. Hearing this, a gloomy look flashed in her eyes. She immediately took a big step forward and said in a low voice, "What does it have to do with us? Why are you so anxious?" "But I'm afraid that you're anxious." When Yao Jing saw that Lin Yiqian was deliberately distancing herself from her, she swept a cold glance at her and quickened her pace to catch up. "Didn't you say that you had something to do at the shooting range?" Since Luo Ran was taken away, nothing will happen to Yiqian. "Ying, you're going to have a hard time." There was a kind of friend who could be smiling at one moment like Siamese twins, and the next second, they could be laughing at each other and stabbing each other. However, after a while, they could be together for something that was mutually beneficial to them. Chapter 641. This kind of friend could not be called a friend. They could turn against each other for benefits, but they could also work together for benefits. In their eyes, there was no friendship, only benefits. Yao Jing and Yi Ying were this kind of friends. They both wanted to drag each other down with them. Every sentence was either a test or a competition. They did not find it tiring. "I don't feel bad about it. I'm used to it since middle school." Yi Ying would not fall for her trick. Her eyes flickered and she said softly, "Yang Heng and Yi Qian are very close." "Jing Jing, do you think Yang Heng likes Yi Qian? Wasn't it an air defense evacuation before?" Yi Qian joined at the last minute and did not participate. He only helped the instructor with some things. "I also did not participate because of my health. I only saw Yang Heng walk directly to Yi Qian after he came out." She slowed down and even her voice was a little low. "I was standing beside him, but Yang Heng did not see me. He walked directly to Yi Qian. The first sentence was 'I knew you were first.' I felt something was wrong when I heard it. When I took a closer look, the smile on Yang Heng's face had never appeared in front of me. It was a smile that made him look different. In the future. Jing Jing, don't say things like Yang Heng likes me. It's not like that at all. He clearly likes Yi Qian. Always wanting her to make a move. Yao Jing, let's see how long you can hold it in." This move really made Yao Jing's heart sink. After all, her kung fu was more profound. After hearing this, other than her voice becoming a little tense, the smile on her face did not lessen at all. "My mother always says that men are fickle when they are young. When they see something good, they will say something good. When they see something good, they will say something good. But what does it matter? The key is that he is a good person. As long as he is a good person, everything will be fine in the future. You, don't be discouraged. I will say good things about you in front of Yang Heng. I will definitely make him like you again." It seemed that the Yi sisters were born to be at odds with her. Yi Ying was better, at least she was a little useful to her. But Yi Qian was like her nemesis. Nothing good would come out of it when she met her. Looking at Yao Jing, who was pretending to be indifferent, Yi Ying pursed her lips and laughed silently. If she was having a hard time, then don't think that you'll have a good time either. Since they were on the same boat, they would either win together or lose together. The two of them, who had their own agendas, had become friends who could support each other. Yi Jian, who had never relied on others and disdained to resort to underhanded means, relied on her own strength and steadily climbed to the peak step by step. The bright red flag was planted in the camp of Year 2 Class 1. The red flag fluttering in the wind became the motivation for the students of Year 2 Class 1 and the other classes. The finish line was right in front of them. If they persevered until the end, they would welcome their own victory. It took Yi Qian 20 minutes to reach the last 5 kilometers. This was the easiest thing for Yi Qian. She had trained with Fujian Town's army twice before, once in the summer and once in the winter. She had completed 3 types of field training with the soldiers, such as marching in extreme weather, rushing over long distances, and long-distance running at night. When facing the ordinary field training of the students, she did not think about winning, but about becoming the benchmark of the whole class. Here we are, here we are. We finally made it. I'm convinced by myself. 20 kilometers of field training, I've toughened up for once. As more and more students reached the finish line, tears came along with laughter. They were tears of joy. They were happy that they had won the battle. Chapter 642. When the students of Grade 2 Class 1 saw Yi Jian standing under the red flag, she looked like a warrior guarding the border. Her posture was straight, and she stood tall under the red flag. That kind of demeanor was fascinating, and that kind of charm made them deeply impressed. Yi Qian was the one and only Yi Qian. Who else could compare to him? Xia Jinyuan, who was standing in the distance, had a faint smile on his handsome face. He was quietly watching the girl who was growing up day by day. In his eyes, no one was as elegant as her. She was carrying her own sky on her thin shoulders. Little fox, good job. 2 instructors walked up to her. They naturally saluted Yi Qian, who was standing under the 5-starred red flag. They lifted their chins slightly and saluted the red flag that was fluttering in the wind. Xia Jinyuan stood up straight and saluted the red flag as well. At this moment, not only did Xia Jinyuan salute the red flag, but all the soldiers who saw the 5-starred red flag also saluted. Gradually, all the students also saluted. At that moment, none of the thousands of students spoke or made a scene. Their expressions were all the same. They were solemn, and inviolable. The wind in the mountains blew gently, bringing with it the sound of the victory bugle call. Someone began to recite the oath they took on the day of the military training. I am a student of the military training program. We take an oath under the 5-starred red flag. I am determined to study hard, train hard, abide by discipline, not afraid of hardship, not afraid of fatigue, be united with the students, respect the instructors, improve myself, strive to be an outstanding student. Lu Qi, Wang Jia, Zhang Yuanshang. The meaning of military training was unity and the courage to challenge. The students who took the oath under the red flag used their perseverance to complete the military training. The oath in Yi Jian's heart was different from theirs. His oath was the oath of a new recruit. It was an oath of bravery and fearlessness to sacrifice. Fight bravely, do not fear sacrifice, defend the motherland, defend the socialist construction. I will definitely fulfill the oath above and will not go back on it. Yi Qian had already memorized the oath of the People's Liberation Army by heart, and could recite it backwards fluently. Her expression was so solemn that even Xia Jinyuan could not approach her and disturb her. After the instructor told them to gather, he looked away slightly and turned to ask the soldiers of the anti-chemical regiment beside him, I don't think all of us are shooting targets. There are a lot of people. The entire class has been arranged. Everyone is given 3 bullets to shoot at fixed targets. There are 10 people at a time, and there are soldiers guarding them. At first, there were no such arrangements. There were too many students, and it was dangerous to shoot blanks. In the end, the provincial military made the decision to include target practice in military training to increase the excitement of some of the boys. First, we'll observe the soldiers' target practice. Then, we'll observe the students' target practice after the soldiers' explanation. With thousands of people, even if each person fired 1 bullet, it would still cost thousands of bullets. Now that each person had fired 3 bullets, it would cost more than 10,000. This was the first military training for students in the province. Some of the training subjects could be reduced. For example, Target practice was a subject that could increase the interest of the students and increase the boys' interest in joining the military. Even if it cost more than 10,000 blanks, the provincial military was more than willing to pay. After Xia Jinyuan thought about it, his thin lips curved slightly. He thought of a way to give Little Fox a surprise. But he was not sure if it was a surprise or not. After all, this Little Fox was actually trying to avoid him. She had left her home phone number, but because of a call from the Commander-in-Chief Xia, she disappeared. He did not believe that she was scared. Chapter 643. Yi Qian had no idea that there was a huge surprise waiting for him in front of him. At this moment, they were already standing in the anti-chemical regiment's wide shooting range, which could accommodate tens of thousands of people. Bang bang bang. The sound of gunfire could be heard. The bullets were low and muffled. Some were single shot, while others were continuous shots. The initial velocity of the bullet was 720 meters per second. This was a Type 81 automatic rifle with a rotary locking mechanism. It could fire single shot and continuous shots. The 7.62 mm barrel was fed with a 30-round magazine. Yi Qian already knew what kind of rifle was being used at the shooting range from the sound of the bullets and the speed of the bullets when they were fired. The other students had yet to react. Someone even said, "Firecrackers. That can't be. Why are they welcoming us back so warmly? It doesn't sound like firecrackers. Why does it sound like fireworks to me? Whoosh. Bang. It sounds like fireworks. Are you stupid? How can you see fireworks in broad daylight? Even if they were, we would still be able to see the fireworks rising into the sky. I can smell the smell of gunpowder. It's quite heavy. It should be firecrackers." The last sentence was said by Enrich. Yi Qian tilted his head and explained with a smile, "It's the smell of gunpowder. But it's not gunpowder from firecrackers. It's another type of gunpowder that can kill people." This was the difference between Yi Qian and them. When the students heard gunshots, they thought they were fireworks, but Yi Qian could tell what kind of gun it was just by hearing the sound of the bullets. This kind of difference made it impossible for them to catch up. They could only look up at the distance. And this kind of distance was not so obvious now. When more time passed and Yi Qian grew a little older, it would truly become apparent how wide the distance between them was and Yi Qian. It would forever be like a chasm that could not be crossed. And Jessen, who was instantly covered in cold sweat, looked at Yi Qian in astonishment. She said blankly, "I know, firecrackers can hurt people too. Such a large thunderclap can blow a person's hand away. The person who gets blown away by a palm is still there, but what I'm talking about is the kind of thing where the person isn't there. Do you think you heard firecrackers in the shooting range?" Yi Qian's smile seemed to change with the sunlight. When the sun was low in the morning, her smile was like the morning breeze that couldn't even blow away the dewdrops. At noon, her smile was even brighter than the sun. It was like a small sun on the ground, giving strength to the exhausted students. Until now, her smile was like a dazzling sunset that faintly appeared on the horizon. Her face was incomparably beautiful, and even the sweat that had stopped at the corners of her forehead was shockingly beautiful. He wished that he could transform into those little beads of sweat just to stay on her beautiful face that was as fine and smooth as jade. "Yi Qian, you're so beautiful. If I were a man, I'd definitely fall in love with you." And Jessen, who was dumbfounded, said blankly. Her gaze was glued to Yi Qian's face. She was actually dumbfounded. Her mind had wandered off, really too far. Yi Qian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "You can instantly change the topic from firecrackers to what I look like." Your thinking is really fast. Oh, that's right. If that's not a thunderclap, then what is it? The sound is too similar. And Jason also felt that she had changed the topic fast enough. Following that, there were intermittent bang-bang sounds. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something, and an extremely bright light flashed past her eyes. She caught hold of Yi Qian's smile, and as if she couldn't believe it, she confirmed, target practice. I know, it's target practice, right? They were already here and heard it. Did they still not believe it? Chapter 644. Setting off firecrackers in the army. I don't know what you're thinking. Is this a place to set off firecrackers? After number 16 high school, it'll be our provincial first high school's turn. Yi Qian looked to the west. The rolling mountains were high and endless. At this moment, even the sun's light was blocked. The mountains were so high that they separated the sky from the earth, making it so that the sun could no longer shine on the shooting range. Yi Qian had always admired the army's choice of camp, especially the ones near the mountains. The sun could shine early, and by the time the sun set in the afternoon, they could set up a shady place early. The same was true for the anti-chemical regiment, but the shooting range, which could accommodate more than 10,000 people, had already been set up in the shade. The heat hadn't completely dissipated yet. Walking on the withered grass, the provincial first high school students saw that only the last 3 classes of number 16 high school students hadn't finished their target practice. They only ran 10 kilometers, and even returned earlier than the provincial first high school. Thinking of this, the provincial first high school students couldn't help but feel depressed. They were all training together, so why did number 16 high school students run 10 kilometers less? They ran 20 kilometers back, but number 16 high school had already finished their target practice. But no matter how unhappy they were, they couldn't say it out loud. The schools were all different. By the time all 17 classes of provincial first high school had gathered, number 16 high school had already finished their target practice, which also meant that 6 days of military training had finally come to an end. Enter, leave. The nearly 800 students of provincial first high school watched as number 16 high school's classes left the shooting range one after another under the instructor's command. They also saw a row of countless long guns set up on the grass. This was the anti-chemical regiment's light weapons shooting area, which was also the shooting range. Next to each gun was a soldier in camouflage. After all, this was a matter of handling guns. A group of students who didn't know anything but liked to pretend they knew what they were doing, so there was nothing wrong with being a little cautious. The guns were already set up, but the people were still at least 2 meters away from the guns. They couldn't get close, so they could only stretch their necks to look. Most of the boys wanted to take a look, while the girls whispered after looking. What gun is this? It's so long. Why does it seem different from the ones we saw before? I didn't see a real gun before, so it's definitely different. I'm a little nervous. I forgot what I taught you before. How are you going to shoot like this? Since there was target practice in the military training program, there would naturally be lectures and explanations to let the students know and understand a little. As for why guns were different, naturally, it would be explained using a simulated gun. What was real couldn't be fake, and what was fake couldn't be real. There was still a difference. I haven't forgotten, but I heard that the shooting is very tight. When the bullet is fired, it can numb the shoulder. I wonder if it's true. That's bad. Don't tell me I can't even fire a gun. I'm not strong enough. There were a lot of guns, but they were also quite scary. Moreover, these guns were all Type 81 rifles. Some of the rifles even had human lives on them. Rifles with human lives on them would have an aura. That was the aura left behind by the person who held it. The students standing at the front were already scared before they even touched the guns. In fact, they were influenced by these guns. Which commoner wasn't afraid of guns? Guns could protect the country, but they could also be used to kill people. It was normal for students to be afraid of guns, especially girls who were born with sharp sixth senses. Therefore, they were often the first to feel fear. Boys were different. Boys didn't have military dreams, but they were born with the dream of being a hero. Men and guns had a natural connection. When they saw it, they naturally wanted to touch it. Chapter 645. The boys in the second row noticed that the girl beside them seemed a little scared, so they chuckled and said, "If you're scared, you can go in the second round. Leave the first round to me." How about that? The most enjoyable thing was target practice. He didn't know what girls were afraid of. You girls are just timid. What's there to be afraid of? It's rare for you to get a gun, and it's a real gun. The boys couldn't understand how timid girls were. How cool it was to hold a gun. How manly and fierce it was to hold a gun in the movies and charge forward with a bang. From holding a gun to firing, to the safety precautions in the middle, the instructor took another 20 minutes to explain. When he was done, his gaze fell on Yi Qian's face. He didn't ask directly, but used his eyes to ask if she had any problems. Yi Qian smiled and nodded. Target practice wasn't a problem. Who else doesn't think they can do it? Raise your hand and step forward. When the instructor saw this, he felt reassured. If she said she could do it, then she definitely could. His hard gaze swept across the faces of the other students, and he saw a few girls raise their hands hesitantly. If they didn't know how to raise their hands, it would be fine. The instructor, who was afraid that they wouldn't force it, saw this, and his furrowed brows relaxed. He shouted, "Everyone, look! Look to your right. Look forward. At ease. Attention." Following his command, the students of Year 2 Class 1 immediately organized their teams. The other classes also did the same. They were about to begin the last event of the military training period, target practice. Each group has 10 people. Start from each group. Regardless of gender. Girls who don't know how to do it, step forward and explain again. If you don't, you give up on target practice. Do you hear me? The young instructor had taught them for 6 days, and his voice had also been shouting for 6 days, but it was still loud and powerful. It was like a drum beating in their hearts. 5 girls walked forward and lowered their heads uneasily. One of the girls said softly, reporting to the instructor, "I don't want to shoot anymore. I'm scared. Looking at the gun makes my legs weak. I'll give you a minute to think about it. If you don't, tell me." The instructor didn't force her, nor did he agree immediately. He turned to ask the other 4 girls, "What about the 4 of you? Do you still need to think about it?" The 4 girls looked at each other. Although their voices were soft, they still said firmly, "I want to try, but I'm afraid I won't be able to hit the target." He had only held the imitation gun for 2 days and explained it for 2 days, and he still wanted to hit it accurately. The instructor smiled and said, "There are no strict requirements for target shooting. It doesn't matter if you miss the target, as long as you don't point the gun at your classmates. Don't move the stand casually. It must be aimed at the front." If there were no requirements for the results, then he could rest assured. "If you guys are afraid, you can team up with Yi Qian." When the instructor heard that it was not that they did not know how to do it, but that they were afraid of missing the target, he immediately thought of letting Yi Qian lead the team. With her around, these girls would be bolder. In the army, Yi Qian was like a fish in water. It had been less than 48 hours from noon yesterday to 4 p.m. today, but the instructor had already unconditionally believed in her and her ability. When the girls heard that it was Yi Qian who would be leading them, they seemed to have forgotten that Yi Qian had only arrived yesterday afternoon and had not even practiced with his classmates yet. At this moment, all of them laughed and heaved a sigh of relief as they said happily, "That's great, that's great." The girl who was afraid of shooting decided to give up in the end. She was indeed afraid. Even now, her legs were still shaking. The instructor did not force her. He gestured for her to return to the team and asked Yi Qian to come out first. "Yi Qian, you will lead the 4 of them in a team. They are timid, so they want you to accompany them." Chapter 646. Yi Qian, I'm sorry to trouble you again. I don't know why, but I believe in you. Me too. I feel at ease with Yi Qian by my side. Yi Qian looked at them and saw the trust in their eyes. A faint and comfortable smile appeared on Ma Yingli's face. Okay, we'll be the last group. Let the whole class cheer for you. Ma Yingli nodded. Okay, we'll be the last group. Let's cheer for you. It was just a small matter, so there was no need to refuse. This was also high school life. This was something she had never experienced in her previous life. She was willing to help these students whose smiles were so sincere. Yi Qian, who was supposed to be the second group to finish shooting, became the last group. With the command to start, the first batch of 10 students stood in front of the loaded 81 semi-automatic rifles. They lay on the ground with their right hand holding the gun and their index finger near the trigger. The butt of the gun must be firmly pressed against the armpit of the shoulder to prevent the recoil from injuring yourself. Look forward, 3 points in a line, and then fire. Before shooting, the instructor who stood beside the gun half-squatted next to the students to remind them again and correct some of the students' incorrect movements. A boy wanted to shoot as soon as he held the gun in his hand. His movements were quite familiar, but he was a bit impatient. The command to shoot hadn't started yet. If he really couldn't wait to shoot, he would be criticized. It hasn't started yet. Why are you in such a hurry to show off? The instructor standing beside the gun calmly reminded him. His voice was as cold as gold and jade. Moreover, with your current aim, you'll miss the target 100%. The boy was a bit embarrassed and laughed. I couldn't help it. Sorry, instructor. Start shooting. With the command, the entire shooting range was filled with bursts of bang 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 gunshots. Then, Yi Qian saw a thick layer of yellow dust floating up from the ground. The 7.62 bullets made a low sound and were quite powerful. They could shoot at a distance of 100 meters, but none of them actually hit the target. It was even more impossible for the soldiers at the shooting range to check the results. Who would dare to stand in front of them? Even if they were hit by a blank bullet, they would still be injured. The sound of gunshots rang in their ears, and some of the girls screamed in fright before the shooting started. When the soldiers in the trenches saw the results of the shooting and waved the command flag, the second batch of students walked towards the shooting range. Yi Ying was in the second batch. She took a deep, long breath and clenched her fists to encourage herself. You can do it, Yi Ying. It was just target practice. That damned girl had only listened to the instructor's explanation for 20 minutes, yet she dared to go on stage. He had been learning for 2 days, so how could he be inferior to a damned girl? One had to know that he had always been stronger than that wretched girl since he was young. The results wouldn't come out immediately. Instead, they would wait until all the students were done with their practice before the soldiers hiding in the trenches in front would bring out the scores for each target. Walking to the shooting range, Yi Ying lowered her head and looked at the rifle in front of her. Luo Ran's words from last night were still faintly echoing in her ears. That idiot even said that he would let that wretched girl have a taste of bullets. But now, he wasn't even here, so how could he let that wretched girl taste it? No matter how he felt, he could only think about it in his heart. How to hold a gun, how to shoot with bullets, and how to pretend that it was an accident, it was too difficult. Even if Luo Ran was here, it would still be impossible. As expected, one couldn't trust an idiot's idea. She must have been crazy to believe his bullshit last night. Chapter 647. But she was really unwilling to give up. This was indeed a chance. No, she wanted to try, she wanted to try. Sir, I'm a little scared too. Can you let Yi Qian accompany me? All the students looked at Yi Ying in surprise. How could Yi Ying be scared? Why would she want Yi Qian to accompany her? Did they hear wrongly? Impossible, the two of them didn't interact much in class. The instructor's face darkened and he said coldly, "Come down if you don't dare." Change to another student. No, sir, I want to try, but I just want Yi Qian to watch over me. With him by my side, I'll feel much more at ease. Yi Ying refused and stood still in the shooting range. She looked at the instructor stubbornly. I must try. I'm like them. With a classmate by my side, I'll feel much more at ease. This was interesting. Yi Qian smirked and walked out from the back of the team. Sir, I can accompany her. What was he trying to do? Push her into the shooting range. Yi Ying, it's easy to guess what you're thinking. If that's really the case, then, you're really digging your own grave. Yi Ying pursed her lips. She didn't know if she could succeed. She also didn't know if she could fake an accident. She wasn't sure if the instructor would suspect that she did it on purpose if she succeeded. Too many uncertainties made Yi Ying indecisive. She was impulsive. She was really impulsive just now. As Yao Jing said, her biggest problem was that she was easily impulsive in front of Yi Qian. Yi Qian could see her regret. He walked out and looked at her calmly. Which position will make you feel more at ease? Please tell me, I'll cooperate. There's not much time left. You have to make a decision quickly. It's about to start. Thank you, just stand by my side. Yi Ying didn't know how many plans she had in her mind, but when she saw Yi Jian taking the initiative to walk out, those immature plans were immediately rejected. Yi Qian raised his eyebrows. So she changed her mind again. Impulsiveness was the devil, but he was able to restrain himself at the last moment. That was some improvement. The second batch began. When Yi Ying laid down, Yi Qian also squatted down at the instructor's signal. Naturally, he squatted beside Yi Ying. Don't be too happy. I've never seen anyone who was targeted by Yao Jing and Luo Ran successfully finish their studies. Even though he was already lying on the ground, he didn't stop his vicious words. I won't let you continue being so smug. Yi Qian didn't know how many times he had heard such words from her. He smiled faintly and replied, That's because you haven't seen it before. Naturally, you haven't seen it. Besides, I really don't think you're that close to them. Ha! You can order them around for you. Yi Ying, one of them is smart while the other is ruthless. Who do you think will be the one toying with who? Her words were like knives that pierced Yi Ying's heart. When she fired the first shot, she was in an extremely unstable state. After firing the first shot, she felt a dull pain in her shoulder. Then, the instructor scolded in a low voice, When are you going to stop harming people? This voice. Yi Qian, who hadn't even noticed the instructor, looked up abruptly. He saw the person who spoke was winking at him. His deep and clear eyes contained a deep smile. The slightly curved corners of his mouth seemed to be asking if he was surprised. Yi Qian silently looked away. This time, there was only surprise, no joy. Chapter 648. When Xia Jinyuan saw her quickly avert her gaze, the corners of his mouth turned up slightly. He wanted to give her a surprise, but now, she was clearly the one giving him a surprise. Who would have thought that he would actually wait for her to arrive at the spot he was randomly standing at? He was still staring at Yi Qian, but he didn't avoid her at all. This made Yi Qian, who had averted his gaze, feel a headache coming on. He really would come to whichever unit he wanted to join. Major Xia, this is really wrong of you. However, the sentence, "Until when are you going to stop harming others," was quite satisfying. After being scolded by the instructor, Yi Ying must have been so embarrassed that she wanted to cry. She was so prideful and always wanted to win in front of him, but in the end, she made a fool of herself. Of course, she made a fool of herself. Xia Jinyuan wouldn't teach a student a lesson, but that didn't mean he could ignore it. As soon as Yi Ying asked his little fox to come up, Xia Jinyuan already knew who the girl who walked up to the shooting range with a gloomy expression was. She didn't want her little fox to finish high school smoothly. How arrogant! Yi Zhifan really raised a good daughter. Yi Ying was Yi Zhifan's daughter. She was smart, but her mind wasn't in the right place. She thought that she had hidden the darkness in her heart well, but she didn't know that the moment she opened her mouth, the expression in her eyes had already betrayed her. At this moment, Yi Ying was completely stunned by the instructor's words. Lying on the shooting range, she didn't come back to her senses for a long time, so she didn't see the instructor squatting in front of her and Yi Jian behind her making eye contact. Yi Jian wanted to ignore the exchange of glances in front of so many classmates, but Major Xia wouldn't let her. She didn't look back, and her gaze fell on Yi Jian with a faint smile. She had no intention of looking away at all. This behavior made Yi Jian feel inexplicably funny. In the end, he looked up and mouthed, "You win, Major Xia." They all ran over to the anti-chemical regiment. Wasn't he the winner? Xia Jinyuan, who had just made eye contact with Yi Ying, smiled in satisfaction. He retracted his gaze and said to the stunned Yi Ying, "Miss, you're not suitable for target practice. You'll hurt the innocent." He had to make her remember that she couldn't do as she pleased everywhere. Don't think that no one would notice her thoughts. In Xia Jinyuan's eyes, this kind of girl was simply asking for a beating. Yi Ying snapped out of her daze when she heard the cold voice. The first sentence stunned her, but the second sentence was like a slap to her face. She looked at the instructor who was half squatting beside her and took the gun away. She didn't even know what to say. Not long after, his entire face flushed red. His chi and blood rushed to his face. It was a fiery red, and it was even more painful. If you don't have good intentions, you won't hold a gun properly. For your safety, I need to stop you from shooting. Xia Jinyuan didn't pick up the gun. He just moved his hand and unloaded the magazine into his hand. He didn't even look at Yi Ying's expression. He quietly half-squatted like a statue. Yi Ying, who felt humiliated just a second ago, narrowed her eyes in the next second. She turned her head abruptly, and a trace of panic flashed through her eyes. Could it be that the instructor saw through her thoughts just now? Xia Jinyuan was squatting with his back to the light and his training cap pulled down. She didn't realize that the instructor standing beside her had seen her before. She saw the instructor holding the magazine with one hand as if nothing had happened. He raised his chin slightly and looked straight ahead coldly. Chapter 649. Yi Ying, who was in a panic, was not afraid of what the instructor said, but she was stopped by the instructor in the middle of target practice. If she told the students what the instructor said, then the image she had worked so hard to rebuild in the hearts of the students these days would be ruined again. The first time could be forgiven, but if it happened again, she would have no place in the class. No, I can't let Yi Qian ruin me over this. I have to say something first. At least. I have to let the students think that I gave up on shooting because I was too scared to shoot a second time, and not because I was stopped by the instructor. In a split second, Yi Ying, who was lying on the shooting range, bit her lower lip and tried to explain herself in a voice that was close to tears. I'm sorry, instructor. I was still very scared just now. I've troubled you. She turned her head and said to Yi Qian, I'm sorry. I was still very scared. I couldn't shoot a second time. It didn't matter whether the instructor believed her or not. It didn't matter what he saw just now. After leaving this place, she couldn't have any contact with a poor soldier like him. The most important thing was that she couldn't let Yi Qian have a chance to speak and let the students know the truth. What she didn't know was that Yi Qian didn't care to play tricks on this kind of thing. Hearing what she said, Yi Qian raised her eyebrows and said disapprovingly, You don't have to apologize to me. If the instructor can see it, I can see it as well. You want to use shooting to get rid of me? Yi Ying, you're really stupid. Do you know how many spies there are here? Do you know why there are instructors around? Do you think you have the ability to toy with the entire army? He knew what she wanted to do the moment she opened her mouth. She thought she was so smart that no one could see through her dark thoughts. Faced with this kind of Yi Ying, Yi Qian sometimes wondered if the smart and ruthless Yi Ying from his previous life was the same Yi Ying now. They were on completely different levels. Xia Jinyuan didn't move or speak casually. He had no choice, he was now the instructor. He had already warned Yi Ying, so it wouldn't be appropriate for him to speak again. I was wrong just now. Yi Ying's face was tense as she glared at Yi Qian with a gloomy gaze. Bang! 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 The sound of bullets rang in her ears. Everyone had started their second round of target practice. Yi Ying, who had a gun in her hand, could only glare fiercely at Yi Qian. It was as if this was the only way to calm down the shame and anger in her heart. A clean and slender hand suddenly reached over. It was Xia Jinyuan, who had a cold expression on his face. He used his palm to block Yi Ying's line of sight. His movement made Yi Qian look up abruptly. It was just a small movement, but it made Yi Qian's heart tremble violently. Xia Jinyuan knew about his relationship with Yi Jifan's family. He knew, and that was why he said those things and why he kept an eye on Yi Ying. That was why he reached out his hand at a time like this to make Yi Ying look even more pathetic and embarrassed. Xia Jinyuan didn't turn around to look. She never told him about Yi Jifan. If she didn't tell him, he could pretend that everything was fine. But now that he saw Yi Ying's ugly behavior, he couldn't ignore it anymore. The sound of gunshots continued. The second batch of students had finished their target practice. Their faces were filled with excitement. Some of the girls even blushed. It was too exciting. They didn't expect target practice to be so exciting. They didn't know how many points they hit. They probably didn't even hit a single point. They all missed the target. Chapter 650. Yi Ying was embarrassed and embarrassed. She ran away from the shooting range as if she was escaping from something. Why are all instructors so nosy? What does this have to do with him? Before he left, Yi Qian took a long look at Xia Jinyuan, who didn't turn around to look at him. His bright black eyes flickered. Xia Jinyuan, do you know that your gentleness and thoughtfulness have also become the reason why she wants to run away? She doesn't dare to have someone who is too perfect for her. She doesn't want to try something that is too deep for her. Major Xia didn't know. If he did, he would probably be troubled for half a day, and then continued to struggle even harder. On the other side, Ying rushed back to class. Her face was still burning red. She was embarrassed and angry. Her thoughts had been seen through by the instructor. At this moment, she couldn't wait for this torturous shooting to end quickly. She didn't want to stay in this embarrassing shooting range for even a second. "How is it? Does your shoulder hurt?" When a classmate asked about it, Ying felt that her shoulder was indeed in pain. She frowned and said, "It's quite painful. I feel that the skin on my shoulder is definitely red." She then said with regret, "It's a pity that I only shot one bullet. I'm really scared." "Ah, why did you only fire one bullet? I thought you had already fired all of them." "Yi Qian is right behind you. You're scared. TSK, you're really timid." The girl who found it unbelievable didn't realize that her words had caused Yi Ying's expression to change. She said, "That instructor is pretty nice. I saw him straighten your gun." Hearing this, Yi Ying's face stiffened. They didn't even know that she hadn't fired 2 shots. She actually said it out loud. She was being called a coward for no reason. Yi Ying, who had gone for wool and come home shorn, pursed her lips and said, "I also thought that Yi Qian would be better with me by her side. Who knew that when I spoke to her, she would ignore me? The instructor is really pretty nice." What else could she say? Other than going along with her classmate and admitting that the instructor was nice, what else could she say? He couldn't possibly say that it wasn't good and say that the instructor had stopped him from shooting. Yi Ying, who was so angry that she almost fainted, bit her cheek. If she had known earlier, she would not have fired the gun. The students below did not know. Why did she say those things again? Yi Ying, who was feeling increasingly uneasy, clenched her fists tightly. She tried her best to calm herself down, not to panic, not to mess up. She took deep breaths to adjust herself. It wasn't until the 4th batch of students went on stage that she suppressed the embarrassment in her heart and calmed herself down. "We're so fast, so fast. I'm so nervous. Yi Qian, I'm so nervous. What should I do? I'm so nervous. How about I don't play?" The gunshots on the shooting range hurt people's eardrums, and the people who were originally afraid became more and more flustered. Bullets could calm a person's heart, but they could also disturb a person's heart. For students who were afraid, the more they listened, the more afraid they became. But for people who liked them, like Yi Qian, the more they listened, the calmer they became. Hearing this, he smiled and said, "Don't panic. There are instructors nearby. If you really don't know how to shoot, ask the instructors. They will definitely tell you." "You're nervous, aren't you, Yi Qian?" "Me? I'm not nervous." The corners of Yi Qian's mouth curved up, revealing a breezy smile as he comforted the nervous girl. "There's nothing to be nervous about. Ask them. They still feel that they haven't had enough shooting and want to go up for another round." Chapter 651. The boy in front, who was craning his neck to watch while talking, turned to the girl and said, "Yi Qian is right. 3 bullets is really too little. We need at least 10 bullets to be satisfied. You guys should learn more from Yi Qian. Learn how to be calm. She hasn't learned before, but she dared to go up after listening to the explanation. We at least understood it for 2 days, so what's there to be afraid of? Right, Yi Qian?" In the end, it was a habit to ask Yi Qian. One of the boys didn't realize it himself and subconsciously thought that Yi Qian's words had a certain amount of authority. Yi Qian seemed to hear it. He laughed and said, "You said a lot, and I also think you're right. Once we're on the field, there's nothing to be afraid of. No matter if we shoot well or badly, at least we've touched guns and shot targets before. We know what kind of artistic conception the song Return from Target Practice has. You guys, you can't go wrong following Yi Qian. Us boys are all following her. With her stabilizing force by our side, what's there to be afraid of? As the boy spoke, he laughed and said to Yi Qian, "Go for it, Yi Qian. Hit 30 points and broaden our horizons. You guys, don't be like Ying. Just now, I heard her say that she only shot once. She was afraid of the next 2 shots, so she didn't shoot anymore." When the boy said this, the girls were not surprised at all. Instead, they thought it was normal. She's a coward. Her body isn't very good to begin with. It's good enough that she didn't faint from the scare of the bullets. It was almost 5 o'clock. The night breeze from the mountains was slightly cool, and it swept away the students who were sweating as they waited for the last batch of students to finish shooting. Yi Qian was in the last batch of students to go up. She wasn't assigned to the shooting range where Xia Jinyuan was standing. Instead, she was separated by 2 people. Standing beside the gun, even her back looked better than the other students. She stood as straight as a pencil, like a soldier preparing to shoot. Xia Jinyuan, who was 2 students away from her, saw that she was looking straight ahead and didn't even spare him a glance. He couldn't help but laugh. Fortunately, his original intention was to come to the shooting range to get closer to her life, not to stay by her side and shoot targets. Now, she was in front of him, and he was in the circle of her school life. He could hear his classmates talking happily with her, and he could see that the girls in this batch relied on her and faintly worshipped her. It was good to be so close to her life. When Yi Jian walked onto the stage, the whole class turned to look at her. Even though they were not soldiers, they could tell that Yi Jian was different. She stood among the mountains and rivers. Her back was even more elegant than the soldier standing beside the gun. She was like a strong pine tree, exuding a majestic aura. She was really a true military posture. Just by standing there, she was already worthy of respect. Seeing this, the instructor of Class 1 asked his classmates with a smile, "How many points do you think Yi Jian will get?" "How are we supposed to guess?" "Why don't you guess, sir?" "Yi Qian didn't come before. Based on the 20-minute explanation just now, I think she'll do about the same as us." "Not necessarily. Yi Qian is very good." After the instructor spoke, the students started to make bold guesses. They were all guessing how many points Yi Qian would get. Some said she would miss the target, while others said she would definitely be better than them with all 3 bullets on the target. The last batch of shooting had already begun. The instructor glanced at Yi Qian, who was lying on her stomach in the shooting range. Then he looked at her holding the gun with one hand and pulling the trigger with the other. Her movements were very practiced, and he could tell at a glance that this was a girl who was used to handling guns. Chapter 652. Looking at the students who were discussing animatedly, the instructor smiled and said, "I bet 30 points. All of them hit the target, 30 points. All of them hit the target." The class was in an uproar. Yi Ying, who had been silent all this while, sneered and said to the girl standing beside her, 30 points. The instructor really thinks highly of Yi Qian. No wonder someone said that the instructor likes Yi Qian. That can't be. Yi Qian just arrived yesterday. How could the instructor like him? Who did you hear that from? On the shooting platform, Yi Qian had already aimed at the target. The black and white were very clear. The bullet was loaded, the safety was off, and the ruler was correct. She placed her finger gently on the trigger and held the gun firmly. She let the back of the gun rest against her shoulder and supported herself with her elbows on the ground. Now, all she needed to do was to look through the hole and through the crosshairs to form a straight line with the target. She could already shoot, but the order to shoot had not been given yet. The 2 minutes of preparation time was up. The third-year students began their target practice. Gunshots could be heard in front of them. The 8th class of the second year was still waiting. They had to wait for the third-year students to finish their target practice before the last batch of second-year students could start. There needed to be a staggered time in between so that the instructors could reorganize and arrange for the third-year students to leave the shooting range in an orderly manner. Amidst the gunshots, the first class of the second year let out cries of disbelief when they heard the instructor say, "The instructor actually likes Yi Qian." Then, they heard Enchanting roar, "Yi Ying, do you have any shame? Do you have any shame? Is slandering Yi Qian enough to make you so happy? Fuck your mother. I must teach you a lesson today." Her voice was so loud that Yi Qian hurriedly put down his gun and looked over. It also made the 10 boys and girls in the first class turn their heads to look over. What happened? Fortunately, with the gunshots as a cover, Enchanting's angry roar did not attract the attention of the other classes. Hearing her voice, Yi Qian turned his head. He saw Enchanting push aside 2 boys and fiercely charge towards Yi Ying. "Hold her waist, LoveLore." Yi Qian shouted coldly as she stood up. Her gaze landed on Xia Jinyuan, who was 2 students away from her. Before she left, she nodded slightly at Xia Jinyuan, indicating for him to let the other students continue with their target practice. The soldier guarding Yi Qian didn't even see how she stood up. By the time he reacted, the girl in front of him had already run a few steps away. Xia Jinyuan frowned slightly. He lowered his eyes and reminded the distracted boys, "Don't be distracted. Focus on your target." He then instructed the rest of the soldiers to keep an eye on the guns and students that they were responsible for. The target practice proceeded as normal. LoveLore reacted quickly as well. As soon as Yi Qian shouted, he immediately rushed out and hugged Enchanting's waist. "Oh my god, you're going to make trouble for the class, aren't you? Who's causing trouble? Who the hell likes to cause trouble? Yi Ying, come, get your ass out here. Let's talk things out. Let the whole class, the whole school, be the judge. Let's see what else you can say with that filthy mouth of yours." Clearly, Enchanting was not afraid anymore. Her training cap was gone, and her messy hair was stuck on her sweaty face. Her delicate face was full of anger. "Drill master, you should listen to what this guy who only knows how to bite people all day long has to say." The situation had really gotten out of hand. Even Yi Qian's target practice was temporarily interrupted. Luckily, only Yi Qian's target practice was interrupted. The rest of the students glanced at each other and, under the soldier's reminder, placed their hands on their rifles again. Chapter 653. Yi Ying only wanted to secretly spread rumors to embarrass Yi Qian, but who knew that Enchanting would suddenly explode like a firecracker, not giving her a chance to retaliate in private. Her face alternated between green and white as she walked out and said with a sullen face, "What are you doing here? If you're unhappy with me, you can talk about it after shooting. Let's go out and settle it. Don't embarrass the whole class." She wanted to push all the blame onto Enchanting, just like in the past, pretending to be righteous and criticizing others. But Enchanting would not do that. She had never been afraid of her from middle school to high school. Hearing this, she sneered, "I'm causing trouble. Come, tell me what she said just now." Yi Jian was practicing on the stage because the instructor asked us to guess how many points Yi Jian could hit. You all know what she said, right? That's right, Yi Ying. I'm sure you all know what she said, right? I'm causing trouble. I'm not afraid even if I cause trouble. You're already slandering me, what do I have to be afraid of? You slandered Yi Qian, and you also slandered our instructor. I'm afraid, why should I be afraid? I only dared to say it because I'm not afraid. But you're just afraid, so now you're acting like a coward. Yi Qian walked over and motioned for LV Axian to let go. He shielded Jiesin by his side and stared coldly at Yi Ying, who was still trying to incite the whole class to denounce her good friend. He said coldly, Jiesin is a straightforward person, and her temper is famous for being amiable. Yi Ying, what did you say to make her angry? You said she's causing trouble. I'm sorry, but in my eyes, the one who can cause trouble is you, not her. Fine, since this matter has started, then let's make it bigger. Yi Ying, I want to see how you're going to clean up this mess. Her gaze was not only cold but also contained disdain, as if everything she did was extremely laughable and would only add to the joke. Yi Ying, who only felt humiliated, looked over fearlessly and said coldly, I was just saying, it didn't affect anything. She was the one who made a fuss and wanted to cause trouble, what does it have to do with me? Yi Qian, don't go too far. There are some things that you should know in your heart. You should say it so that you don't embarrass yourselves even more. Oh, I understand. Yi Qian smiled, but his eyes were as cold and sharp as a sword. He looked at Yi Ying coldly and said, You said bad things about me, so you made Jiesin angry. It's not like you can say anything bad in front of me. Why do you have to say it secretly? I'll give you a chance to say it in front of me. I won't hold a grudge against you. The students who could understand the double entendre naturally understood, but those who didn't saw that Yi Qian didn't say anything, so they simply said, Yi Qian, we all know it's fake. No one believes her words. That's right. She asked Jiesin precisely because she didn't believe us. Jiesin got angry the moment she heard it. It's not her fault. We were quite angry when we heard it too. No one knew who said this, but Yi Ying suddenly looked up and glanced over with a gloomy gaze. You're angry from hearing this. What a joke. If you were really angry, you wouldn't be laughing so happily just now. With a deep gaze, Yi Qian smiled and said to the girls who spoke, Sorry, I want to hear it from Yi Ying herself. Because I'm giving her a chance to say it in front of me. I'm giving her a chance to openly say bad things about me. Giving her a chance to openly say bad things about her. The moment he said this, the expressions of the students in the class changed subtly. Chapter 654. What he said made sense. Every time, Yi Ying would only talk about this and that in private. She wouldn't dare to confront Yi Qian directly. Just like now, if she really had any evidence, she could say it in front of Yi Qian. The students all looked at Yi Ying. Yesterday's incident was not over yet, and today, Yi Ying was saying strange things in private. Now that Yi Qian had stood out to ask her to clarify things, it was up to her to say it herself. If there was really something, Yi Ying could say it. If there wasn't, Yi Ying probably wouldn't dare to confront Yi Qian directly. How could Yi Ying dare to confront Yi Qian directly? She knew all too well that what she said was baseless and without any evidence. She was just trying to make things difficult for Yi Qian and make the other students distance themselves from her. It was impossible for her to say it out loud. She didn't want to, but the students looked at her subtly. They agreed with Yi Qian's words and quietly waited for her to confront him. Yi Ying felt so guilty that her vision turned black. She clutched her chest and scolded sternly, Yi Qian, don't push me too far. What did you do? Why don't you admit it yourself? Just as she finished scolding him, Yi Qian said calmly, I don't know what I did to make you slander me again and again. Because I don't know, I'm asking you to say it in front of me. I'm tired of this kind of behavior where you play dirty and pretend to be innocent. I don't know what kind of mentality Ying has, but you always like to talk about me behind my back. First, I won't be fierce to you. Second, I won't scold you. Third, I won't hit you. In front of the whole class and all the instructors, Ying, I'll give you a chance to talk about me. His dark eyes stared unblinkingly at Ying. His gaze was cold and sharp. I'll ask you to tell me now. What did you say to make Yi Qian so angry? Under such a gaze, Yi Ying's heart couldn't stop thumping. She couldn't resist Yi Jian's overbearing and cold gaze. However, she was very clear that she absolutely could not panic now. If things really got messy, then it would prove that she was deliberately spreading rumors and slandering Yi Qian. Taking a deep breath, he pursed his lips and said, I didn't say anything. I already said that she was being petty and making a mountain out of a molehill. If you really want to know, fine, I can tell you after you finish shooting. Now, please don't delay the other students' shooting time. Don't make the other students unable to shoot because of you. Yi Qian smiled and shook his head. No, it's not my problem now. It's yours. I don't mind not shooting. It won't affect anything. But if you don't say it yourself, I'll ask my classmates. Once I ask my classmates, Ying, do you know what this means? I told you not to say it in front of me, but you just had to say it behind my back. Despicable. And Jiaxin continued. Her face was full of anger as she glared fiercely at Ying. She shouted, it's the behavior of a petty person. Ying, you're a petty person. A despicable and shameless petty person. She was a petty person. She said she was a petty person. Ying, who was just reminding herself not to panic, was so angry that her whole body trembled. And Jiaxin actually called her a petty person in front of the whole class. She actually dared to slander her. Chapter 655. Ying was so angry that her body was trembling. She raised her hand and pointed at Yi Qian. She shouted, I'm a villain. Then who is she? A shameless villain. Then Yi Qian is a shameless villain. Does she know how to shoot? She doesn't know how to shoot at all. She doesn't know how to do anything, yet she still has the nerve to go on stage and cheer for the other girls. What does she know other than gilding her own face? The students of grade 2 class 1 didn't like what they heard. She actually said that Yi Qian didn't know how to do anything. Yi Qian seemed to foresee a storm coming and stopped the students who wanted to argue. Don't be anxious. Stay where you are. We already caused trouble for the instructor yesterday. We can't cause any more trouble today. No matter how much trouble we cause, no matter how good our performance at tomorrow's inspection is, we can't beat the internal enemy evaluation. If you have anything to say, we can stand and talk. Don't make things difficult for the instructor. The instructor was not only in a difficult position, but he was also angry. He didn't know what he did to make the student with heart disease misunderstand and say such dirty words. Hearing this, she said in a deep voice, the other classes have finished their target practice. Now, it's our class that's causing a ruckus. Ying, I've already invited the political commissar over. If you really have any evidence to prove that there's an unusual relationship between Yi Jian and me, I'll accept military punishment without hesitation. If you don't have it, you owe me an apology. You owe Yi Qian an apology. I'm not apologizing. Why should I apologize? What did I say? Who told her to slander me? They should apologize to me. Ying was so angry that her fingertips were trembling. She didn't have any rationality left. She had always been a good student in the eyes of the students and a good student in the eyes of the teachers. And Jiaxin actually dared to say such things about her. She must apologize to her. Yi Ying was still thinking about her own image. She didn't realize that her actions had negatively affected the military instructor and the image of a soldier. Soldiers represented the country. They couldn't tolerate any slander. Even if Yi Ying was a student, she couldn't be forgiven easily. The other students did not understand what the instructor meant. Only Yi Qian, upon hearing that the instructor had even invited the political commissar over, immediately realized that the matter that made Enchanting angry had something to do with the instructor. What does this have to do with the instructor? What does it have to do with me? Also, the instructor had just said that he had an unusual relationship with her. What did that mean? Why couldn't she understand? At this moment, no matter how smart Yi Qian was, he could not figure out what stupid thing Yi Ying had just done. Yi Ying, can you stop? Yi Qian is better than you in every way. Can you stop yelling here? Yesterday's matter has just passed, and today you're up to no good again. Are you deliberately trying to destroy the unity of our class? Watch your words. Yi Qian is better than you. His studies are better than you. His character is better than you. Even his military training was better than yours. We just think that Yi Qian is better. What can you do about it? Her words really angered everyone. Fortunately, Yi Qian had stopped her classmates from making a ruckus in advance, so the incident did not spread. In the eyes of the other students, they thought that the student from Year 2 Class 1 who suddenly left the target range was scared. When she returned to class, the other students were comforting her. The whistling bullets finally stopped. Yellow dust rose from the target range. When the whistle blew, all the students except for Yi Qian from Year 2 Class 1 had finished shooting. Chapter 656. When all the students came down from the shooting range, the soldiers guarding the automatic rifles picked up all the guns, put away the mounts, and removed the magazines. A rifle without bullets was only safe. The soldiers climbed out of the trenches and counted the results of the last batch of students. When they saw that there was only one bullet in the 5th position of the second year Class 1, which was the 5th position of the last batch of students, the soldiers didn't notice anything wrong. To be honest, it was not easy to tabulate the students' results. There were at most 3 bullet holes in a target at a time, but in the end, there were 6 or 7 bullet holes. This meant that a student's bullet had missed the target and landed in another position. Tabulating the results was just a data point to let the students know that there was evidence. After tabulating the results, they left quickly. The third-year class also left the shooting range one by one. Then, the second-year class left one by one. Even the second-year class left. These students did not know that something had happened in the first-year class and they had to wait for the political commissar to come before they could leave. After the students of Grade 2 Class 2 left, only Grade 2 Class 1 had a large shooting range. Xia Jinyuan handed the gun to the soldier he named and walked straight to the first-year instructor. He glanced at Yi Qian casually and said in a deep voice, "What was the commotion just now? What happened?" The instructor was a major with 2 bars and 1 star. He immediately stood at attention and saluted, "Sir, this student secretly spread rumors in the class that I have a bad relationship with this student, and some of the students believe it. To prevent the situation from worsening, Yi Qian's target practice is temporarily suspended." Over. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows a little high. It seemed that Yi Jifan's education was a bit of a failure. His daughter was not very smart. The last batch of students who had just returned really did not know anything. When they heard this, their eyes were filled with shock. How is that possible? There are so many boys in school chasing after Yi Qian, but I didn't see Yi Qian getting close to any of them. Yi Ying, don't talk nonsense, okay? The girl who had asked Yi Qian to accompany her for target practice said angrily, Yi Qian can't have anything to do with the instructor. She just came back yesterday. Yes, I don't believe it either. It's impossible. Yi Qian didn't even accept a love letter from someone. You really know how to talk nonsense. It wasn't only the girls who spoke up. A boy also said, I don't believe it either. That boy from grade 12, whom you girls regard as the school hunk, even wrote a love letter to Yi Qian. I even helped him give it to her, but Yi Qian didn't even accept it. You also accepted Yi Qian's love letter on behalf of grade 12 class 12. Damn, I have one too, but I didn't take it at that time. I just said, don't let outsiders take the benefits. Ha ha ha, smart, right? There was a slight change in Major Xiao's expression. He looked up and glanced at Yi Qian with a half-smile. His thin lips curled up a little. Not bad, he's so popular. His hands are going soft from receiving so many love letters. He just didn't know if he had actually received a love letter, or if he had opened it and read it. He had to have a good chat with her about this matter tonight. This time, Yi Qian finally understood why Jessen was angry. He didn't even notice the change in Major Xiao's expression. Yi Qian looked at the pale-faced Yi Ying and said, the instructor is not bad. I quite like him. Yi Ying's eyes lit up when she heard this. She said sharply, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Am I talking nonsense? She's the one who admitted that she likes the instructor. Yi Qian, you're really shameless. To think that your classmates trusted you so much. You actually like your own instructor and are in a relationship with him so quickly. Chapter 657. Yi Jifan's daughter was too impatient. She was too impatient to make things difficult for Little Fox. Little did she know that Little Fox was waiting for her with her claws bared. Xia Jinyuan quickly thought of Little Fox from the bunch of boys writing love letters. How would Little Fox react? He pulled himself back from his thoughts and said calmly, is liking someone the same thing as being in a relationship? Of course. She's in a relationship with the instructor. She said it herself. How could Ying let go of such a good opportunity? Her heart raced and she clenched her fists in excitement. She did not expect Yi Qian to admit that she liked the instructor. This was a godsend. She controlled her speech and her expression became serious. Her willow leaf furrowed and she said in a pitiful tone, she's that kind of person but you didn't believe me. Now, do you still not believe me? How could she be a match for Little Fox? Little Fox probably wouldn't even bother to deal with a girl like her. Presumably, Yi Jifan was also worried about his daughter who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. She was so stupid, but she still thought that she was smart. Yi Ying, I do like the instructor. Don't you like him? I don't think I have a reason not to like him. He's a soldier in the anti-chemical regiment and has served in the army for 3 years. In those 3 years, our instructor has been awarded 2 third-class merits and 1 second-class merit. Last July, a toxic gas leaked from a chemical factory in Hainan province. Our instructor and the soldiers in his class risked their lives to enter the factory. Yi Ying, do you know what kind of gas it was? When the human body breathes 0.05 milliamps, it will cause nausea and vomiting. 0.1 milliamps will cause nerve damage. Any more than 0.05 grams and you'll go into shock and your life will be in danger. If it reaches 0.2 milliamps, Yi Ying, you'll lose your life and completely disappear from this world. Why don't I like the instructor? Why don't I like an instructor who is willing to sacrifice his own life for the safety of the people? And you, Yi Ying. What right do you have to slander a brave, righteous, loyal, and responsible instructor. What right do you have? What right do you have to rely on? Who gave you the guts to slander a soldier's reputation? What right do you have? What right do you have? Why? Ying was forced to retreat step by step with a series of questions. The entire place was silent. Ying, whose face was ghastly pale, retreated one step after another. However, Yi Jian took another step forward, and another step forward. Every time she asked, why, she would take another step forward, forcing Ying to the side of the shocked instructor. Instructor, surnamed Huang, first name Shun, joined the army at the end of 1994. After 3 years of service, his military achievements were outstanding, and he was awarded 2 third-class merits and 1 second-class merits. He would retire at the end of this year and return to his hometown with glory. He would continue to carry forward the spirit of a soldier in his new position. This time, there were a total of 17 instructors who would retire at the end of this year. Yi Qian had a rough understanding of the situation of the 17 instructors from the political commissar during dinner last night. Naturally, he focused on the instructor in his class. No, that's not it. Yi Qian, you're quibbling, you're distorting the truth. You're my fellow instructor. Yi Ying, who had nowhere else to retreat, still wanted to defend herself, but when she looked past Yi Qian and saw the expressions on her classmates' faces, the look in their eyes. In that instant, even the color of Yi Ying's lips turned deathly pale. She couldn't say any more. If she did, her classmates wouldn't let her off. Chapter 658. No one would have thought that the instructor who taught their class was so powerful. She had even achieved 2 third-class merits and 1 second-class merits in the military. They also didn't expect Yi Qian to know everything about her. Just as they were shocked by the instructor's experience, the entire class was shocked by Yi Qian's ferocious aura. By the time they regained their senses, Yi Ying had become the target of public criticism. Everyone's gaze fell on her face. Yi Qian wasn't very happy to see Yi Ying retreating step by step until she had nowhere to retreat and was left speechless. Her gaze was calm, like the surging waves of the sea. It was so calm, but it made people's hearts tremble. As Yi Ying watched, her lips couldn't help but tremble. She didn't dare to say those baseless words anymore. She didn't even dare to utter a single word. Yi Ying, you're so disgusting. Previously, Yao Jing insulted Yi Qian's mother. Today, it's your turn to slander our instructor. No wonder you two are good friends. You're jackals of the same tribe. And Jesin said through gritted teeth. The anger in her eyes didn't disappear, but burned even more fiercely. It was Yi Qian's continuous why that ignited all the anger in her heart. The burning anger seemed to be able to burn Yi Ying to ashes. The continuous why not only shocked Yi Ying, but also the entire class. Yi Ying was shocked to the point of panic, and the entire class was shocked to the point of anger. Within Jesin's words, even more students looked at each other angrily. The class monitor, Liu Axan, heard Yi Qian say to him calmly, "Class monitor, this is a private matter between me and Yi Ying. It has nothing to do with the rest of the students. Please step forward and make the students stand in formation. No matter what kind of conflict Yi Ying and I have in the future, please treat it calmly. Especially Jesin, remember my words. Don't be impulsive under any circumstances. Fighting and arguing are not solutions to problems. I won't use such extreme methods to deal with a private matter between me and Yi Ying. Since it's also related to our instructor, the army will also come forward to handle it. Trust me, the army will seek justice for our instructor later." They will definitely not allow an outstanding soldier to be slandered for no reason during his service. Yi Qian knew exactly what he wanted to do. Yi Ying had stirred up trouble, and he was running out of patience. Then, he would make a fuss to his heart's content. Since she could instantly ignite the anger of the entire class with a few words, she could also use a few words to keep the angry students rational and not affect the entire class. She said that this was a private matter between her and Yi Ying, so it had nothing to do with her classmates. When the army investigated, they would not implicate her classmates. Yi Qian was trying his best to protect his classmates for the sake of the big picture. He did not want to implicate everyone because of Yi Ying. The students of Class 1 were smart. When they heard what Yi Qian said, they all understood why he said that. Yi Qian, this isn't just about you. Yi Ying is talking about your instructor. We won't let you face this alone. That's right. We are a class and a group. How can you face this alone? Yi Qian, I support you. Stop talking. We still don't know what the truth is. I don't agree with what Yi Ying said, but I did see that the instructor treated Yi Qian differently. Let's just listen to Yi Qian. We shouldn't get involved. Chapter 659. Lu Axan heard the chatter of his classmates and stood up to say loudly, "Quiet down, let's just listen to Yi Qian. Can we not get involved?" The instructor treats Yi Qian well because of Yi Qian's outstanding performance. Now, listen to what Yi Ying says. Is that okay? Xia Jinyuan heard all the discussions and his deep eyes darkened. Fortunately, Little Fox had some status in the class. Otherwise, Yi Jifan's daughter would have succeeded in inciting them. Xia Jinyuan glanced at Yi Ying, who thought she was very powerful, with a cold light flashing in the depths of his eyes. There was a faint sneer at the corner of his mouth. Yi Jifan's daughter had already provoked Little Fox to the point where she had lost all patience. She should not have dragged a soldier into this by slandering him. Little Fox could be said to have gotten to where she was today because of the help she received from the military. Uncle Jen was a first-class sergeant major and Principal Chin was a world-class sniper. They were the ones who groomed her and helped her get to where she was today. The military also provided her with a lot of convenience. It could be said that the military was Little Fox's home and the soldiers in the military were her family. Even though Yi Qian had never met the soldiers in the Chemical Defense Regiment, she recognized them because of their uniforms. Yi Ying had slandered her family first. It was no wonder Little Fox wanted to force her into a corner. With Little Fox's intelligence, if she wanted to teach someone a lesson, she would not do it herself. Instead, she would force the person to use underhanded means to harm himself. Xia Jinyuan, who did not intend to leave, glanced at the instructor of Class 1, whose lips were pursed into a sharp line. He saw that the soldier had maintained a serious expression. Although he was also very angry, he was very calm. He knew very well that he should not say anything about such things in order to avoid a bigger misunderstanding. He kept looking at Yi Qian. Clearly, he was somewhat surprised. He was surprised that Yi Qian knew about his meritorious service. What happened between me and the instructor? Why did you stop talking? Is it because you have nothing to say? Do you know that you were spouting nonsense? Yi Qian stopped moving forward. She stood calmly in front of Yi Ying, who was like a thorn in her back. She looked at Yi Ying with her beautiful black eyes without a trace of emotion. If you can continue talking, I will listen carefully. She had to continue, but she could not say that Yi Qian liked the instructor. Facing the anger of her classmates, Yi Ying knew that she had to change her method. After her eyes flashed, Yi Ying knew that she should be able to say something. His lips moved and he covered his chest with his hand. His face was pale as if he would faint from suffocation in the next second. He said with a trembling voice, "Yi Jian, don't force me. Don't force me. If you didn't appear, none of this would have happened. You say that you don't like the instructor. Can you guarantee that he doesn't like you? Can you guarantee? I'm not the only one who saw that the instructor treated you differently." Like a drowning person, Ying began to flop around. Her eyes were very bright. It was the unwillingness in her heart that supported her. It was even more so the crazily growing jealousy that supported her. She absolutely could not bow down to Yi Jian and admit defeat. She was Yi Ying. She was the one who could beat and scold Yi Qian at home. Her mother said it herself. He was just a piece of grass. No one would take responsibility for him even if he beat or scolded him. He was just a piece of grass. What right did he have to step on her head? Chapter 660. Today, she was going to taint the wretched girl's reputation. It would be great if she could make the students think that the wretched girl seduced the instructor. No, not everyone. Even if only a few students think so, it would be fine. After returning to school, this scandal would slowly spread. By then, even more teachers and students in school would think that the wretched girl seduced the instructor in the army. Thinking of that scene, Ying seemed to see the beautiful days. She said in a low voice, "There are over 50 students in the class. I've been with the instructor for 5 to 6 days and I've never seen him smile at anyone. I've never seen him talk and laugh with any girl alone. I've never seen him praise any girl. I, Yi Ying, am not blind. I saw it clearly. Say it, say it. Do you dare say that the instructor doesn't like you? You don't dare. He's obviously flirting with you, yet you're still speaking so righteously. Yi Qian, you're the one who disgusts me. He even said that he'd bet 30 points on you. How much does he like you to have such confidence? 30 points. It's only been 20 minutes. How can someone who hasn't even touched a gun hit 30 points? Even if I don't understand, I know that's just a fantasy." These words struck a chord with the students who also saw the instructor talking and laughing with Yi Qian. Yi Ying wasn't lying this time. They didn't believe that Yi Qian liked the instructor, but they still felt that the instructor did like Yi Qian. Otherwise, why would he treat Yi Qian so well? Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "I also like Yi Jian from your class very much. However, it's not that like that this student is talking about. It's the kind of like that I admire. Student, don't you know that there's another kind of like called admiration? Is there an end to it?" Every time he opened his mouth, he would say something that Xia Jinyuan didn't like to hear. No matter how well-mannered he was, he had to speak up. The sharp-eyed Ying stared at the instructor who was also speaking for Yi Qian, a complete stranger. She then said with a half-smile, "You might admire Yi Qian, but it's impossible for you to admire our class instructor." Yi Ying. Yi Qian's voice was as cold as ice. He interrupted, "You think the instructor likes me? That's why you're so confident that I can hit 30 points. Are all your suspicions because the instructor smiled and told you that I can get 30 points? Is this your best evidence? It's because I can hit 30 points that you suspect the instructor likes me. On the other hand, if I can hit 30 points, wouldn't that mean I don't like it?" Yi Qian repeated himself, causing Yi Ying, who was eager to win, to completely miss the meaning behind his words. She nodded and said, "That's right. Otherwise, why wouldn't the instructor say that other girls can hit 30 points? Why did he say you?" "I understand." Yi Qian, who was smiling slightly, had already seen the political commissar walking over with 2 soldiers. His footsteps were hurried but steady. He then looked at Xia Jinyuan, who had an indifferent expression on his face. She believed that he had already seen the political commissar walking over. She also believed that this dangerous man wouldn't say something like, "He also admires me," for no reason. There must be a reason for him to say something like that. Yi Qian, who couldn't figure out Xia Jinyuan's intentions, said coldly, "You're slandering a soldier's reputation. Do you think you're in the right?" Chapter 661. No matter what his intentions were, she believed that he was definitely on her side. Yi Ying did not see the political commissar walking over. In her eyes, there was only the face that was getting more and more beautiful, and only the person that she was becoming more and more afraid of. She gritted her teeth and maintained that cold smile. She said gently, "I didn't frame you. All the students were on the field for target practice except for you. Doesn't that mean that in the eyes of the instructor, you're the most special one?" Yi Ying, who had already taken the bait, didn't know that Yi Qian had already begun to reel in the net. She continued to speak righteously, "Right now, the instructor is so guilty that he didn't say anything. Only you, who have nothing to lose, are still arguing with me. Just now, this instructor said that it might be our instructor who admires you. Then you should at least show us some ability that the entire class can see. Maybe our instructor really appreciates you because you can hit 30 points. Hearing this, Yi Jian really felt that Yi Ying's head must have been hit by a door today. Was Yi Ying not afraid that she would show her real ability and directly crush her baseless words and her little technical framing? Also, he now understood why Xia Jinyuan said that liking someone could also mean admiration. Yi Ying really couldn't wait to see what ability she had to gain the instructor's admiration. Sigh, even he didn't dare to casually respond to that dangerous man's words, but Yi Ying didn't even think before saying it. Looking at the ignorant Yi Ying, Yi Qian, who already understood why Xia Jinyuan said that he also admired her, said meaningfully, "It's just 30 points, yet you can still cause trouble. It seems like you're certain that I don't have that ability, right?" She didn't want to do anything to Yi Ying in school, but she couldn't stop Yi Ying from courting death. Liking someone was admiration, and admiration was liking someone. It was such a simple matter. She only needed to do one thing to shatter all of Yi Ying's accusations and make her lose face. Yi Ying, who didn't even know that she was slowly walking into a trap, raised her chin slightly with an arrogant expression. "It's not that I'm certain that you don't have that ability, but when did you, Yi Qian, have that kind of ability? Just based on yesterday's series of military postures with the instructors? Shooting and military posture are two different things, so I don't believe that our instructor appreciates you just because you have the ability to shoot." To Yi Ying, as long as Yi Qian couldn't prove that he had the ability and the instructor was so confident, then the students who saw the instructor treating Yi Qian differently would all believe what Yi Ying said. They would believe that the instructor really did like Yi Qian. As long as someone believed her, Yi Ying would win. What she wanted was for Yi Qian to not have any peace in class. Although their methods were crude, there was also the ability of public opinion to distort the truth. It was enough to ruin a person's life with rumors and slanders. Wasn't that how Yi Qian was destroyed in her previous life? But in this life, everything was different. In this life, no matter what Yi Qian did, no matter what tricks Yi Ying played, she was fearless. But Yi Ying, there's no such thing as absolute certainty. What if the instructor really admires me? The political commissar approached step by step. Yi Qian knew that the political commissar must have heard what she said. She raised her eyebrows slightly and continued with a smile, "Your suspicions aren't without reason. I didn't think that the instructor would have that much confidence in me." Chapter 662. Since you have so much confidence in me, how can I let our instructor down? Yi Jian's words were really Yi Ying's eyes shone even brighter when she said that. She even said that she had let Yi Jian down. What a stupid thing. She had personally verified that every word Yi Jian said was true. Yi Ying's eyes sparkled with excitement. When she saw the instructor's solemn expression, her eyes flickered with a trace of disdain. He was just a poor soldier. What was so great about him? Yi Ying, who was secretly pleased with herself, looked at Yi Qian again. Suddenly, she saw Yi Qian looking at her with a faint smile. Her heart thumped heavily for no reason. She suddenly felt flustered. What kind of smile was that? Why was she smiling at her? Stupid girl. What's so funny about you? Soon, you'll be notorious in school. Who will admire you then? Xia Jinyuan's smile deepened when he saw that Yi Ying didn't know what was going on and had fallen into the little fox's trap. He seemed to understand why the little fox didn't do anything to Yi Jifan's daughter. It was because she couldn't be bothered to do anything. She didn't see Yi Jifan's daughter as an opponent at all. That's right. The little fox was able to issue a rage notice and use her actions to tell Yi Jifan that she was fearless. She wasn't even afraid of Yi Jifan, so why would she be afraid of Yi Ying? It was because she didn't take Yi Ying seriously that she was able to handle the situation calmly. Because she wasn't in a hurry to make a move, she used the attitude of a spectator to watch Yi Jifan's daughter prance around like a clown. Now, the little fox had made a move because someone had crossed her bottom line. What they saw was the little fox's calmness, but what he saw was a serious expression beneath that calmness. She was angry and annoyed. Only Xia Jinyuan could see the anger beneath Yi Qian's calmness. Yi Ying, if I don't let you have a taste of what it feels like to be slapped in the face, then I'll really let you do whatever you want. What Yi Qian didn't know was that if it had been another girl, Yi Ying would have really been framed. That was because no one could hit a 30-circle target after only listening to a 20-minute explanation. The political commissar, who was standing at the side and listening to their conversation, saw that even though the students of Year 2 Class 1 did not leave the shooting range, they were still standing in formation. He felt a little relieved. This group of troublesome high school students, after a few days of military training, he had been worried sick. This year, they had learned their lesson. Next year, they would still go to school for military training. Whatever field training, target practice, they would all be cancelled. Everyone would stand at attention. Huang Yishuan, step forward. The political commissar stood at the front and coldly glanced at the students with different expressions. He shouted loudly, and his strong military prestige made the hearts of the students in the class tense up instantly. Yi Ying, who hadn't been paying attention to her surroundings, shuddered in fear. The instructor stepped forward, walked to the political commissar and saluted, Year 2 Class 1 instructor, Huang Yishuan, reporting. With the leader around, it was no longer a matter of Yi Ying and Yi Qian asking each other questions. To Yi Qian, she had already said what she needed to say and had confirmed it over and over again. Yi Ying said that she liked the instructor and that the instructor liked her because the instructor said that she could hit a 30-circle target. To the instructor, it was really an unexpected disaster. Yi Ying, since you want to lose so badly that you don't even want to finish high school, then I'll fulfill your wish. Chapter 663. It was already 5:00 and the other classes had already started eating. The students of the second-year Class 1 were listening to the political commissar explain the whole situation. He repeatedly asked all the students if Yi Ying only said that they liked each other when the instructor said, Yi Qian can hit the 30-point target. The answer of the whole class was naturally the same because Yi Jian had confirmed it repeatedly just now. That's right, political commissar. Yi Ying said that she liked Yi Jian because the instructor said that he thought Yi Jian could hit the 30-point target. We didn't lie. We heard everything clearly. And this. I don't know which class instructor heard it too. Xia Jinyuan nodded and said with a cold expression, that's true. Regiment Commander Guo brought Xia Jinyuan back to the regiment and directly told the political commissar that this major looked like Commander-in-Chief Xia. When the political commissar saw him stand up to testify, he knew that this matter was completely unfounded. And this girl who insisted that there was something going on between the instructor and Yi Qian. The political commissar narrowed his eyes and smiled amiably. I understand. You mean that only Yi Qian can hit the 30-point target, which proves that instructor Huang only admires Yi Qian and doesn't like him, right? That was what she meant, but why did it sound like something wasn't right? Ying couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong. She just felt that something wasn't right. What did she mean just now? That didn't seem to be what she meant. Her meaning was very clear. Either the instructor likes Yi Qian, or Yi Qian likes or seduces the instructor. All of a sudden, Ying realized what was wrong. Everyone, including the political commissar, thought that as long as Yi Qian hit the 30-point target, there was no such thing as liking him. It was purely admiration. She was just spouting nonsense. No, that's not it. I only know that there's something going on between the two of them. Yi Ying said hurriedly. What did she say just now? Why did everyone think that as long as Yi Qian hit the 30-point target, the instructor only admires Yi Qian? The political commissar's face darkened when he heard this. He said in a low voice, Student, don't bring your ability to go back on your words to the military. The military is a place that pays attention to facts. You clearly meant that the instructor thinks that Yi Qian can hit the 30-point target, so you suspect that the instructor likes Yi Qian. And Yi Qian can hit the 30-point target because he admires Yi Qian. That's what you meant just now. Why did you change your mind? Or have you been planning this from the very beginning? Did you deliberately come here to create trouble? If that's the case, Originally, I admired you for persisting in military training even though you had a heart condition. The more I admired you at the time, the more disappointed I am in you now. Yi Ying was no match for the political commissar. Her face, which had finally regained some color, turned pale again. Yes, that's what I meant. Please don't misunderstand me. His face darkened. His voice deepened. Ying couldn't withstand his mountain-like military might. She then heard the political commissar say to Yi Qian, hitting the 30-point target isn't a problem. How about 10 shots to make it perfect? How could the soldiers trained by Fujian Town's Commander Lu and Old Yen be cowards? This was a military unit that trained drivers for Zongnanhai. Chapter 664. Perfect. That's not bad. There's no problem at all. Yi Qian smiled. Her beautiful face was mesmerizing. She saluted and said in a crisp voice, I promise to complete the mission. Even the majestic green mountain became a backdrop to set off her military might. Putting down her hand, Yi Qian looked coldly at Yi Ying, who could not hide the panic on her face. This time, you're the one who asked for it. Her voice was full of vigor and authority. Her eyes were firm and cold, exuding a strong sense of confidence. As Yi Ying looked at her, the panic in her heart was like a raging flood, rushing to the point that she almost couldn't stand steadily. The students of Grade 2 Class 1 also heard it. They were all shocked. They didn't hear it wrong, right? Yi Qian did not want to shoot 3 bullets. She wanted to hit the bullseye, and she wanted it to be perfect. No way, that's so awesome. Don't tell me Yi Qian knows how to imitate guns. Damn, who the hell is she? This. How good is she? And Justin, do you know that Yi Qian knows how to shoot? Why haven't I heard you mention it? And Justin revealed a mysterious smile and said sweetly, even if I knew, I wouldn't go around telling everyone. If I did, someone wouldn't be able to make a fool of themselves today. Please keep quiet. While you enjoy the change in expression on this little person's face, you must also enjoy the heroic bearing of our Yi Qian. Shooting is nothing. A small matter. She did not know if she knew how to shoot, but she knew. Since she dared to challenge Ying, she would not let Ying get what she wanted. That was because the Yi Jian she knew would never do anything she wasn't confident in. The gun was quickly sent over. It was the same gun that they used to shoot, but it was not a complete gun. It was a gun that had been disassembled and registered for maintenance. The Type 81 was the most reliable assault rifle in China. It would not malfunction with less than 15,000 bullets. It would only be overhauled with 20,000 bullets. But after being shot by a group of students who did not know anything about guns, how could it not be properly maintained? The military always did things quickly. The guns were immediately serviced. The Type 81 was a target gun that the military gave to the students. There were no guns that could not be disassembled, but it was not suitable to send it over. Instructor Huang looked at the disassembled gun and said, "I'll assemble it. Yi Qian, you go to the target. In order to let Ying understand that you really admire me, I'll assemble this gun." Yi Qian took the rifle from the soldier who delivered the rifle and knelt on the ground. In front of the student's eyes and mouths, he quickly began to assemble the rifle. The handle was here, the butt was here, and the base had to be fastened. The gun that was sent over was not completely disassembled, only half of it. For Yi Qian, who only took 30 seconds to assemble a sniper rifle, the students only saw her hands moving and heard the sound of caw as she assembled the gun. The political commissar who was staring straight at Yi Qian wanted nothing more than to hold her hand and say, "Student Yi Qian, our anti-chemical regiment really needs soldiers like you." Instructor Huang's vision was a little blurry. Every soldier knew how to disassemble and maintain a gun. There were often competitions in the platoon to disassemble and assemble guns, but he had never seen a high school student assemble a gun so quickly and so skillfully. After assembling the gun, Yi Qian fastened the magazine and said to the political commissar, "Type 81 automatic rifle, fire 10 rounds in a row. 10 rounds on target, perfect." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.